Well, I try to think them away, but nothing could keep them at bay. And the time I fight, they come right back. Yeah, seems nothing would stop them or last. to shine. Don't let them steal your mind away from you. Said if they owed you money, I won't need a penny from you. Oh, you're stronger than you think. Don't let these wounds sting. I promise soon. 'Cause you're 4, 5, 6, sometimes 2 goes. If your roof is tin and your house caves in and nobody
There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can say about it. I tried to meditate about it. I even tried to pray about it. I'll let go before I explode. Before I explode, I'll let go before I explode. Before I explode. I used to lean on my pride, but I don't have any left. I put my heart to the side, I kept it all to myself. Who cares? Playing the cards that I'm dealt. No fair, did it without any help. Daddy taught me well, never be proud of myself. Life was a living hell, I started doubting myself. Something is telling me it won't be clear until I look in the mirror. Something is telling me it won't be clear until I look in the mirror. I'll let go before I explode. Before I explode, I'll let go before I explode. Before I explode. Won't walk around with my head down. I work through the trauma till everything's okay. Sometimes it feels like I'ma drown. I work through the trauma till everything's okay. Won't walk around with my head down. I work through the trauma till everything's okay. Sometimes it feels like I'ma drown. I work through the trauma till everything's okay. I'll let go I've been going colorblind, looking for the silver line. Wish the stars would all align. I've been cursing at the sky, let the rain fall from my eyes. I've lived 1,000 lives. You can't have my heart, you can't hold my mind. I won't stay, I won't change. You can't have my heart, you can't hold my mind. I won't stay, I won't change. Where's the ground? I keep falling off the edge. Lost my ground, now you're heavy on my head. Yeah. So full of love, so full of pride. While I sift through all my vices, like I'm running out of time. You're scorching my mind. Propane to the fire, ignite my desire. I can't ignore the flame. You can't Yeah. Where is the ground? Feels like I'm falling. I lost my crown. Feels like I'm falling. Where's the ground? I keep falling. Feels like I'm off the edge. Lost my crown. Now your head feels like I'm on the edge. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. I now call this meeting of the Anchorage Assembly to order. Tonight is December 3rd, 2024. It's a regular meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Assemblymember Myers.
Here.
Member Martinez.
Present.
Member Littlefield.
Here.
Member Rivera.
Present.
Member Johnson.
Here.
Chair Constant.
Here.
Vice Chair
Here.
Zalatel.
Here.
Member Bronco.
Here.
Member Volland.
Happy to be here.
Member Brawley.
Here.
Member Salt.
Here.
Member Perez Verdia.
Here.
Student Representative Bookman.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Next, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Salt, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Rivera, would you please read the land acknowledgement?
Yes, Mr. Chair. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement recognizing the indigenous people of a place. It is a public gesture of appreciation for the past and present indigenous stewardship of the lands that we now occupy. It is an actionable statement that marks our collective movement towards decolonization and equity. The Anchorage Assembly would like to acknowledge that we gather today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabascans. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina have been and continue to be the stewards of this land. It is with gratefulness and respect that we recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of the Upper Cook Inlet Dena'ina.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Next, we have minutes of previous meetings, but there are none tonight, so we'll move on to the Mayor's report. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, everyone. Before Thanksgiving, we hosted a press conference at the Don Young Port of Alaska to share important milestones on the modernization project. That includes, for the first time, new alignment on the design of the project and a refreshed plan of finance to pay for it. We issued the RFP for the construction of Terminal 1 last week and will be sending out another for the design of Terminal 2 before the end of the month. And we were very happy to share that our federal delegation helped the municipality secure $50 million in port development funding to get it all done. It's hard to overestimate how critical the modernization of the port is and how much we value the financial support. Thank you very much to Senator Sullivan, Senator Murkowski, and Representative Paltola, as well as municipal staff for making it happen. Thank you, Vice Chair Zalatel, for your role in the press conference and for your steadfast stewardship and enthusiastic and ongoing advocacy of the port. There have also been some important updates this week in our work to address homelessness. As of last week, we are providing more than 500 beds of municipally funded shelter to residents this winter. Next week, we plan to finish standing up warming centers. We also know we need more housing. While we can't control every factor of the housing market, there are ways we can use land more efficiently and ensure our regulations support our priorities, making more types of housing available across a wide range of neighborhoods. Our housing strategy, which is currently being reviewed by partners and assembly members, will be released next week for public feedback. And as we bring more resources online, we continue to use abatement as a tool to protect public safety when appropriate. For those who are breaking the law, we continue to be strongly committed to an appropriate law enforcement response. Speaking of law enforcement, I was honored to attend the ceremony celebrating APD's newest Academy graduates, Class 24-1, on the day before Thanksgiving, along with members Bronga and Johnson and Brawley and Chair Constant as well. Thank you to the graduates and their families for their strength, perseverance, and dedication. I want to say again how grateful I am for their choice to serve and protect our community. It's not a small task or an easy task. My best wishes to the graduates and their families. I look forward to the profound, positive, and lasting impact I know they can have. Other important events over the last week included Anchorage's Shop Small Saturday celebration, encouraging all of us to support local businesses this holiday season, and the tree lighting in Town Square Park. Also included was the unexpected holiday delight of llamas and festive sweaters. Thank you to the Small Business Development Center, the Anchorage Chamber of Commerce, and the Anchorage Downtown Partnership for your role in these events. There are a lot of people out there who may think winter in Alaska sounds pretty dark and cold, and while we definitely get a bit of that from the weather, it's a joy to see how much light and warmth there is from our community this time of year. Nowhere was that more evident than at the Pacific Island Community Gala on Saturday night. Congratulations to the 17 awardees, including youths, elders, businesses, and community allies who were honored for their role in celebrating, supporting, and sharing Polynesian culture. And I know Member Martinez was also there at the gala. And then lastly, it was also my honor to give opening remarks this morning at the Bureau of Indian Affairs Providers Conference at the Dena'ina, which runs through Friday. There's a lot of overlap between their agenda and what we're working on at City Hall, especially when it comes to expanding housing and childcare. The more people we have working on these challenges, the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Next, we have the Chair's report. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our regular business meeting. I hope everyone enjoyed their Thanksgiving holiday, especially our municipal workforce. Municipal staff work very hard to make our community a better place and make sure the essential services are delivered each and every day. I hope you got some nice time with your families and friends and enjoyed a small break. And if you had to work on those days, we're grateful to you for your support of the municipality. I'd also like to speak about the port modernization. My colleagues, Vice Chair Zalatel and Member Johnson, participated in an event a few weeks ago to celebrate the recent milestone of the port modernization program. I'm sure they'll both have some details to share, but I want to underscore how important the port is for our community and how momentous it is that we've reached these milestones. When the Assembly took up the port as a priority many years ago, it was very messy. We didn't have a plan, we didn't know how much it would cost, and we couldn't get the different stakeholders into agreement on what was needed. Over the course of 4 mayoral administrations, the Assembly has been a steady force in ensuring that the project continues to move forward along the lines that we've agreed upon. Fast forward today and we have plans and designs. We now have a petroleum and cement terminal. I hear petroleum soon going to go across the dock, and a new administration building. We have over $500 million in grants, and we have strong collaboration and agreement among stakeholders, and we're waiting for a $360 million decision from the U.S. Federal Court of Appeals. There's still a lot of work to be done, but we can see a path forward now together, and the future of the port has never looked brighter. Also, this Thursday, the Assembly will be hosting a retreat to dig deeper into the issues of energy and infrastructure in the region. Every year or so, the Assembly's been holding a retreat to take time out of our typical fast pace to dive deeper into a particular topic and make room for dialogue and collaboration with our community of partners. This year, we wanted to make time for an emerging priority that is of extreme interest to our community and sure to be at the forefront of the Assembly work in the coming years, and that's Anchorage's energy future. In recent years, we've been hearing more about the Cook Inlet gas shortage and how it will impact the cost and availability of energy in our community. And when energy costs go up, every cost goes up. At the retreat, the Assembly will hear from experts on the current state of the issue as well as from municipal staff leaders on how the municipality is tackling the issue at home. It will be a great opportunity to learn how we can position the municipality to take advantage of opportunities and be prepared for the challenges ahead. I have some optimism on the resources and people who are starting to tackle this question for the municipality. Now on to the regular business. With that, I have a full agenda. We have a full agenda tonight, and I'll do my best to move us along so that we make the most reasonable hour possible. This is a business meeting, and we're here to do the work of the municipality. Please help create a climate of respect in the chambers. Refrain from personal attacks and speaking out of turn or shouting and clapping unless clapping is called for. Keep signs to 8.5 by 11 inches. Please keep the aisle clear. Except when lined up to testify. Please also don't approach the dais, but if you have information for the Assembly, the clerk will be able to receive it. Please stop speaking if a point of order is called, so I may rule on the point of order and the record is clear. If rules aren't followed, I may interrupt speakers to call for compliance. If compliance, the rules don't occur, then I may pause the meeting. If there's an actual disruption, I'll give a warning. If the disruption persists or happens again, the person will be asked to leave. With that, I think we will now move on to committee reports. We'll start with Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to report.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez.
Thank you, Chair. The next CEDC meeting will be this Thursday at 9 a.m. at the Permit Center.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Littlefield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The AMAT's Policy Committee met on November 21st, and after a lengthy discussion, the Policy Committee voted to remove the mega project, the Safer Sewer Highway Project, from the MTP. Going forward in the months ahead, I'm sure there'll be a lot of conversation about the Safer Sewer Highway Project through the AMAT's committee.
Thank you, Mr. Littlefield. Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of updates. First, for the folks who might not be here when we take up item 13B, just wanted to highlight the 2 work sessions on Project Anchorage for this Friday. The first one is from 12:45 to 1:45 p.m. to discuss the S version, alternate versions, and any amendments. The second one is from 1:45 to 2:45 p.m. to discuss community-raised impacts. So both work sessions are going to be at City Hall, first floor, room 155. I encourage folks to attend. I'll leave any other updates on Project Anchorage to Member Salt. Second update is on AML, Alaska Municipal League. So the annual conference is next week. Highly encourage members of the Assembly, my colleagues, to attend, as well as members of the administration to attend. It's always a great gathering. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last meeting of the Infrastructure, Enterprise, and Utility Oversight Committee was on November 21st. We had a full agenda. First topic we talked about was AWU, and this is an item that's up for action tonight relating to a 4.5 rate increase for water and sewer. This ask for a increase in the rates really reflects rising costs for them, as we're seeing with so many entities. Also, the effects of increased regulation and permit renewals. Just as one example where costs are going up, for the main water treatment chemical we use, the cost increased 66%, so that is significant. If it is approved by the Assembly tonight, it will still go before the Regulatory Commission of Alaska for approval by them in February. Also worth noting, our rates, even if they are going up, still fall below the national average. And it was also pointed out, we also have the only glacially fed public water source of any city in the U.S., which is nice. On the Don Young Port of Alaska, we got an update on the Ship Creek small boat launch. In 2024, the expenses to operate it were $133,000. The vast majority of that is for dredging. And the launch fees we collected from the users were $271. So significant delta there. That cost is being carried currently by the port users. However, the port is making efforts to reduce costs, perhaps collecting more fees. And we're also looking at perhaps a Defense Community Infrastructure Program grant opportunity, as turns out GA Bear uses the ramp there quite frequently, about 100 times a year. On the petroleum and cement terminal, we are getting closer to full operation. The port did take possession of the new facility in 2023. Cement started right away. However, we had to pressure test the fuel lines before they could be put into service. Went through a rather protracted procurement process. We got into the reasons for that during the committee meeting. However, ultimately, we do have a contractor on. It's a $2 million cost, which it will be covered by a grant, which was awarded for the PCT work. And the hope is to have it fully operational by the end of the year, finally. Finally, with solid waste services, we got a nice update on material recovery efforts. This is ongoing efforts to reduce and divert the amount of material that's going to the landfill, which, as we know, is filling up. Just a couple of statistics. Between May and October, customers are over 2,500 customers dropped off plastics, which is great. And then we also had 1,430 loads of wood and brush dropped off. We also briefly talked about the rates, and as with the other utilities, these rates reflect the cost for SWS. Disposal and collection utility rates are set separately, but they do affect each other. And our tipping fees, the cost to dump garbage, if you will, is still favorable compared to other parts of Alaska and the West Coast. However, I understand some people don't like these fees and unfortunately have been taking it out on the customer service personnel. So I'd just like to remind everyone, the customer service people, collecting the money when you show up at the transfer site or the dump, they don't set those prices. They have no impact over them. They're just doing their job and they're doing it well, so please treat them with respect. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Alto.
No report, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alto. Mr. Rowland.
Thank you. I will just highlight that Friday, where did it go? We have a joint meeting of the Anchorage, the school board and the assembly, Friday, December 6th, 10 to 12. And that's going to be at the ASD Education Center boardroom at 5530 East Northern Lights Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rowland. Ms. Braga.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to report.
Thank you, Ms. Braga. Ms. Brawley.
Thank you. Yes, I have a couple reports. First, thank you to Mr. Rivera for covering the Alaska Municipal League, or AML, report. Second is the Budget and Finance Committee. So the committee last met on Thursday, November 21st, discussed next steps in terms of the FY25 budget and the work that is involved with getting from here to the beginning of next year when that fiscal year starts. We heard our brief reports on monthly revenue. We identified some follow-up topics to cover in 2025 meetings of the committee, including bed tax, SEMT reimbursement that we get, and the Building Safety Service Area, or BSSA. So those are things to look for on the horizon in next year. We have canceled our December 19th meeting, the regular meeting this month. So our next meeting will be Thursday, January 16th, 2025, when we'll dig into those topics. So please be advised if you watch those meetings. Second, the Legislative Committee report. So our last meeting was in November. We don't have another meeting scheduled for 2024, but with introduction and hopefully adoption of the 2025 legislative program tonight, which is on our agenda, this committee's work will be done for 2024, but we also know the legislature is gearing up for session and getting organized, and so we will certainly be monitoring that. The next meeting of this committee will be scheduled in January 2025 on a monthly schedule during legislative session, so look for that again if you're interested in following. And those are my updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brawley. Mr. Salt.
Nothing to report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Salt. Mr. Presverdia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just notification that the next meeting of the Assembly Public Health and Safety Committee is tomorrow, December 4th at 11 a.m. in City Hall, room 155. We'll hear updates from the Health Department, Police Department, Fire Department, Department of Law, Office of Emergency Management, and the Mayor's Office. A few highlights that we'll hear from the Health Department on their teen unintended pregnancy program, from APD, an update on their AI in report writing, and we'll get an update from the Mayor's Office on their outside investigation updates. So I look forward to that, and please join us. Thanks.
All right, thank you, everybody. Oh, to the youth member. Youth member, do you have a report?
Nothing to report.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Madam Clerk, for the reminder. All right, so next we will move on to the addendum to the agenda. But before we get to the addendum, we're going to address late on the table items, which incorporate any late on the table items. For items not supplemental, they will be subject to the late on the table procedure. Tonight, though, we have only supplemental items and one item for introduction. So I'll go ahead and read the two supplemental items and then get to the item for introduction. Item 10F1, Assembly Information Memorandum, unnumbered 2024, Administration's answers to Assembly questions. Then 15B1, Information Memorandum, and a numbered resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its conditional protest regarding the transfer of location of package store license number 1596 for AK Inc. DBA Speedway Express located at 101 East Northern Lights Boulevard, Anchorage 99503. Next. The clerk reminds me that the other item is also supplemental, doesn't need to have a first, second, or third, so I'll read it as well. It's item 10G14, AO 2024-104S, an ordinance of the Anchorage Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code Title 21 to reduce the cost and burden of the multifamily residential developments by suspending residential design standards for development applications submitted within a time certain. That takes care of the reading. So I would like to ask for a motion to incorporate the addendum as printed and distributed.
Do you need to deal with the introduction item?
So Mr. Salt has asked we not introduce that item tonight, and that will come forward in another form soon. And it's going to evolve its Pokemon form. So next, I'd like to ask for a motion to incorporate the addendum as printed and distributed in the late on table items.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Salatel, seconded by Mr. Wooland. I'd like to ask unanimous consent. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing and hearing no objection, the item has, the items have been laid on the table. We've incorporated the addendum as printed and distributed and laid on the table items. So next, we will take on our appearance request. Mr. Patterson. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have minutes.
Hi, my name is Michael Patterson. I live in District 5. I want to talk about the vote and debate at the November 19th Assembly meeting regarding Amendment 2 and 8, and for brevity's sake, I'll just refer to the amendments as review board amendments. What happened in those review amendments is everything that's wrong with the Anchorage Assembly. About 5 years of work from community organizers, families, and community members has gone into the creation of a review board, which, to be clear, the review board amendments did not even establish a review board. It merely provided a funding mechanism to facilitate a robust public process. Essentially, this body voted down a public process. And as it has become painfully clear, there is not a robust public process, as the legislative and executive branches are incredibly prohibitive to regular community members who don't donate thousands of dollars to election campaigns. And for example, work sessions, there's no public testimony. Committee meetings, there's public testimony at the end, which you get 3 minutes, and you constantly have to remind people to talk to the people on the phone. Moreover, when regular community members do organize and participate, we are derided, dismissed, and defamed. I want to particularly highlight my assembly members from District 5 and Amanda Moser from the administration. The greatest act of public service that you have done is deciding not to run for re-election. Thank you. You, as a person of color myself and as a father of children of color, what you said was so manipulative and exploitative, I don't even need to really explain it because you already know. And in particular with Amanda Moser, who's part of the administration, the fact that in July, community members had sent the mayor's administration, which the mayor is in on these emails, about something called a community compact. Back in July, we got a response from you the day after the vote on November 20th, after a critical budget vote that just said received, attachment read. And then when I critiqued you and said you were unprofessional, it just said received. You are so incredibly unprofessional, it's not even funny. I also want to highlight the fact that the chair and Branga are going to introduce a resolution to response to the death of 4 German shepherds. The irony being, that resolution calls for transparency and accountability. It has more safeguards from asking the administration to do more things for dogs, which, by the way, I love dogs, I have a German shepherd, than it does when the police kill somebody. We pay attention to what you do. It's frankly insulting. Since this body and the mayor refuse to do what they need to do, the community is going to do it. And don't get the impression because you voted something down that the movement for a review board is going to go away. You all should really be ashamed of yourselves.
Next up on the agenda, we have the consent agenda. So the consent agenda items 10A through 10G. And are typically routine and non-controversial items such as bid awards, new business, information reports, and ordinances and resolutions for introduction. The items on the consent agenda may be accepted, approved, adopted by the Assembly by a single vote on a motion to approve the consent agenda. Prior to approval, items may be pulled by an Assembly member for discussion and separate vote on each item. Under the Assembly Rules of Procedure, all ordinances and some resolutions will have an opportunity for public hearing on a future date. So we'll start with Mr. Presverdia.
No items. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Presverdia. Next, Mr. Salt.
No items, thank you, Chair.
Ms. Brawley.
Thanks, no items.
Thank you, Ms. Branca.
No items.
Thank you, Mr. Volant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 10B9.
10 Bravo 9?
Correct.
Thank you. Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 10 Delta 1, 10 Delta 2, 10 Echo 7, 10 E5, and I'd ask that you come back to me after you've completed going down the dais. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Johnson.
No items.
Thank you. Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No items.
Thank you, Mr. Littlefield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No items.
Mr. Martinez.
No items.
Thank you. Mr. Myers.
No additional items. Thanks, Chair.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go through the list real quick. We have item 10B9, Mr. Voland, 10D1 and 2, Ms. Zalatel, 10E5 and 7, Ms. Zalatel. Ms. Salato, you wanted to have me come back to you.
Yes, on 10G9, could you direct that the public hearing be set for the 21st of January?
Madam Clerk, I would ask that the public hearing for item 10G9 be set for January 21st. Ms. Salato,
Thank you. If I may have a moment of personal privilege.
you have the floor.
Thank you. So the item at 10G9 is the ordinance authorizing the municipality of Anchorage through AWU to execute and enter into 3 agreements pertaining to the municipal public water supply and the Eklutna Hydroelectric Project Fish and Wildlife Program. We have set the public hearing on the 21st with 4 goals in mind. The first is that the municipality can engage in a productive settlement discussion with the owners of the hydroelectric project on a number of issues relating to Eklutna. I'm optimistic that we can reach a resolution that works for Anchorage, the other owners, and the native village of Eklutna. Second, setting these hearings for January will allow time not only for those settlement conversations to take place, but for AWU to continue to have conversations about how to protect our public water supply. And lastly, I'm really looking forward to having these agreements come back before us, and hopefully by that time, when they do, we are presented with a proposal that takes into account the governor's decision to study pump storage hydro at Eklutna, as well as the changing factors around our water supply. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So then I would like to go ahead and ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the pulled items.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Salatal, seconded by Mr. Voland. I'd like to ask unanimous consent on the consent agenda. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing no objection, the consent agenda has been adopted. So to all members of the public, if the item you're here to be heard under the consent agenda is pulled, then those items have been adopted. So the work you're here to see done is done. So next, we will go ahead and take a moment of privilege outside of the ordinary agenda. Instead of a reading resolution, we will go ahead and take up the swearing in of Chris Hunter, the purchasing director, who was confirmed, I believe, previously. Mr. Hunter, come forward and bring your team. Everyone feel free to come forward. Who wants to?
Raise your right hand. I solemnly swear or affirm
I solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Alaska,
the Constitution of the State of Alaska,
and the Charter of the Municipality of Anchorage,
and the Charter of the Municipality of Anchorage,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
of purchasing director
of purchasing director
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
High fives, high fives.
Can you get a picture?
No.
All right, thank you very much, and welcome aboard, Mr. Hunter. I'm sure we'll have a few projects going forward. Next, we have item 10B9. 10B9 is Resolution AR 2024-381, a resolution of the Anchorage Assembly establishing labor relations policy guidelines and direction for 2025 collective bargaining agreement negotiations with the International Association of Firefighters. Item was pulled by Mr. Boland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Boland, I believe second by Ms. Brawley. Yep, thank you. Mr. Boland.
Thank you. So this essentially will be the Assembly's guidance, our policy guidelines, as bargaining agreement negotiations commenced with IAFF. It is consistent with prior guidance, which is referenced in the item and also attached as memorandum. And I think we are all very aware of the fact that when it comes to public safety, we can stand to be more competitive, and employee retention, right, is crucial. So we don't want to be losing our firefighters who are very valuable to Tacoma or other jurisdictions. We want to make sure that they are compensated competitively and well taken care of. And so I think the resolution speaks to that. I also believe that, well, I know because I'm a co-sponsor, that there is an amendment, but I think one of my colleagues may speak to it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Salto, I'm going to go ahead and just call on you, and we'll try to figure out what's going on with your
Thank you.
computer.
Technology, it's delightful. I'd move Zalatel-Voland Amendment Number 1.
Second.
Motion to amend by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Boland. Go ahead, Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you. So what this amendment does is it adds a whereas clause about the mobile crisis team. Since the last time IAFF has bargained, we've stood up the mobile crisis team, and it needs to be a part of the bargaining. It's currently staffed by firefighters through voluntary overtime. And while very much appreciated, in order to get us to 24/7, needs to be a part of the overall conversation. And so it asks to add in the resolves portion that negotiations shall include 24/7 staffing of the mobile crisis team in an operationally sustainable fashion that ensures no service interruptions. So I think this is important. It's something we've heard from IAFF, and while I appreciate we have a current solution, it's one that I hope we don't have to rely on in the very long term. Thank you.
I'll let you go first, Mr. Boland.
Yeah, I hope my colleagues will support this. I think we've seen the value of the mobile crisis team in our community and the journey, the evolution, from using alcohol tax funds to support it and then finding other funding sources. And having seen the value, I think it's crucial to make this, a more built into our community service. And so, having the mobile crisis team be a permanent fixture of the fire department, very important. Thank you.
Thank you. And on the amendment, I'll speak briefly just to say I would add that it's not just funding it, it's the vetoes and the overrides and the filibusters and the drive against the effort and all of the history that went into getting it to now where, in my conversations with the chief, he says it's probably the most significant improvement in our service delivery in his experience here at this time. So it's very valuable. On the amendment, members, any objection to the amendment? Hearing and seeing no objection, the amendment is adopted. On the main motion, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, thank you. I just briefly want to state that I think the key point that we're trying to emphasize here in this resolution is the fact that for the Anchorage Fire Department, their wages have increasingly become less competitive to other West Coast fire departments and have lagged significantly behind the consumer price index. Depending on which calculation you use, it's somewhere between 15 and 18%, which is significant. So I expect my members will support this, but I just wanted to briefly take this opportunity to say to all the firefighters that we rely on day in and day out to keep us safe, who have ridden it out with this department despite seeing perhaps more attractive offers elsewhere, just thank you for your continued dedication to Anchorage.
Thank you. And I have myself in the queue briefly just to say at the NLC conference last month, I visited with Tacoma Mayor Victoria Woodard. And I took the opportunity to congratulate her on her very effective recruitment tactic of advertising directly to Anchorage firefighters, using former Anchorage firefighters in their YouTube videos, and how amazing it is that they're able to so aggressively target our folks. And she didn't know about it. It's her fire department and their leadership who's doing it. And I was earnest in my congratulations. Like, if we could figure out how to be so competitive, we should, and when we can, we will. It's out of our control, I think. And so I also asked the mayor for a tour of the Tacoma port. And so in the spring, Ms. Zalatel and I are planning to go down, and maybe we'll talk to the mayor and go look at the other end of our supply chain. And so, and also see how they're aggressively recruiting our fire department. So with that, if there's no one else, members may proceed to vote. All right, on a vote of 12-0, and the youth member votes
Yes?
yes. AR 2024-381, as amended, has been adopted. Mayor, moment of privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for this quick moment of personal privilege. And, reference to public testimony, the public can complain about me as mayor, and when I served on the assembly, I expected that as a member. However, our staff does not deserve that, and that member of staff works for me. I support my staff, and I ask that any concerns about my staff and responses be directed to me. So please direct your concerns and your complaints my way. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. I assume that was in relationship to the audience, the appearance request. So,
yes.
Just to be really clear. Okay, so next we have item 10D1 and 10D2. We can take them up together, right? Yeah, Ms. Zalatel.
Read them.
Thank you. Keep me in track. 10D1 is AM 930-2024 Executive Appointment Confirmation Hearing, Kim Waller, Chief Equity Officer. 10D2, Assembly Memorandum, AM 931-2024 Executive Appointment Confirmation Hearing, William D. Falsey, Chief Administrative Officer. Ms. Zalatel.
Move to postpone both items to the meeting of December 17th.
Second.
Motion to postpone to December 17th by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Member Volin. You want to speak to it, Ms. Zalatel?
Briefly, the confirmation hearings for both of these are scheduled for December 13th. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? Volin. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote. The motion is postponed to December 17th. On a vote of 12-0, and the youth member votes
Yes?
yes, both 10D1 and 10D2 will be before us on December 17th. Next, we have item 10E5. 10E5 is AR 2024-375, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating an amount not to exceed $130,000 of Sullivan Arena Capital Reserve account revenues as a transfer from the Sullivan Arena Capital Improvement Projects Fund 401-800 to the Sullivan Arena Area-wide General 2024 Operating Fund 101-000 for the payment of 2024 utility expenses associated with the operation of the Sullivan Arena. Ms. Zalatel.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Volant. Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you. So I move to approve this item because these utility expenses need to be paid. But I think this is a good reminder that the Sullivan Arena contracts were one that we gave considerable scrutiny to. There was a contract, there was a secondary contract, and there needs to be some reconciliation of what the operator is slated to pay over the course of the contract, what the municipality is slated to pay. And so with that, I'd like to refer this matter over to the Quality Municipal Services Committee for its January meeting. I've consulted with Mr. Falsey, if it's meeting in January or whenever it's next meeting, to kind of go through this, make sure we're clear on what to expect from these contracts, because as these appropriations come forward, I think there will continue to be questions unless we have a clear understanding. Thank you.
right, Mr. Vollen in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to throw it over to Mr. Falsey with a question, just briefly. Do we feel that we've confirmed for sure that it is the responsibility of the municipality to pay utilities until August 2025?
To the chair, to Member Vollen, yes, that is the information that I have received from the person who is in charge of this. And we have taken a look at the underlying documents themselves, and it does seem to confirm that August 1st, 2025 is when responsibility for the utilities switches over.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, the next meeting of the Equality Municipal Services Ethics and Election Committee is going to be on December 18th, and happy to put it on that agenda.
Awesome, earlier. Okay, so thank you. Do we need a formal referral, or is it just the delay enough and everyone agrees?
Just getting it on his agenda.
Okay, good enough. Then we don't need a vote on that. The vote then is a motion to postpone to, what was the date?
Nope.
Oh, it was a motion to approve.
Yes, but still taking it up in the committee.
Okay, so the action is to approve right now?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Then, is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, members may proceed to vote. On a vote of 12-0, and the youth member votes
Yes.
yes, AR 2024-375 has passed the body. So, one sec. Then the last item on the consent agenda tonight is 10E7, Resolution AR 2024-378, a resolution of the Anchorage Assembly relating to appropriations, reducing the appropriation to the Assembly for fiscal year 2024, providing an additional appropriation to the Fire Department for fiscal year 2024, providing an additional appropriation to the Office of Equity and Justice for fiscal year 2024, and providing an effective date. Ms. Zalatel.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved to approve by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Voland. Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you. Just as a reminder, we set aside some funds to work on employee retention and recruitment in first quarter. These are two items, but I do have a verbal floor amendment. So the first part of the floor amendment is to make the amounts in section 1 and section 2 and section 3 the same, each one reading $111,700. The second part of the amendment is at line 21 and 25, having both of those read at the end of those sentences, and fiscal year 2025 into operating projects fund, one second, I can't read my own handwriting. Operating projects committed general fund 190000.
Second.
There is a motion to amend, which we're still capturing, and seconded, made by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Voland. So we'll take a moment to make sure the clerk has an opportunity to get it right.
That's good.
So the mover agrees that the language on the board is accurate. You want to speak to it now?
So first thing this does is it makes sure this rolls over into 2025 into this fund, so it's there for the use that we're appropriating it for. Second, what this does is it does the, works on the AFD wellness program that Mr. Constant has talked about. What I am most excited about, though, is with the Office of Equity and Inclusion, is that the HR study identified some, or the administration out of the HR study identified some actions around manager training and other ways to really work with our workforce from within. And I think putting that work in the Office of Equity and Inclusion is really fulfilling why we created that office. And so this provides those resources there. So we'll be directed by the administration in conjunction with the Office of Equity and Inclusion, but I'm really excited to be centering that office in these pieces of our work. I am hopeful that what this tells the municipal workforce is that we are very serious about equity and inclusion, and we want to make sure that action taken from that HR study really puts that lens on it. Thank you.
Okay, on the amendment, Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, I'll just add briefly that, actually, no, I'll speak to this on the main item. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Bronga. On the amendment.
I think I need to wait for the main item also.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bowen, on the amendment. Same. Okay, on the amendment, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the efforts here with as it relates to the Office of Equity and Justice. I think that's all well and good. My question is, I mean, we're talking about taking roughly 20% out of the wellness program that we did.
I can speak to that.
Okay,
yeah.
If you could explain what the impact of that would be.
Yeah, no, there is broad commitment by all parties, the administration, the assembly, the movers, the fire department, that in Q1 we will finalize the appropriation to get it full. And so the project is already funded through mid-year, and then this will get it through 3/4 of the year, and we will come back to this question then. And so what this does is allow the administration to tackle some issues that we had a kind of a communication snafu on. They had a priority that wasn't expressed by the time we hit the sweep button, and but yes, all of this will be funded by the time we get to when it's needed.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Ms. Bronga.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, I realize this is probably a better place to bring this up. If we're carving out little bits of this and that to fund other things, I really would love to see that arch security doors for the new detox wing were considered. I know that there's been a discussion that some funds may become available later on, but this is really an important step for that facility to be the only detox for youth in the state, and they need the security doors for $100,000. So I'm putting a pin in it. If we're shuffling money around, I'm hoping that we can find money for that.
All right. On the amendment, I will just confirm that there are ongoing commitments to achieve the funding for the ARCH project. This funding source is targeted toward recruitment and retention, so it's specifically tied, so it's not germane, but you have the full commitment of the team out there and us to make sure that that gets dealt with at the soonest available opportunity. So, okay, now on the amendment, any objection to the amendment? Hearing and seeing no objection, the amendment is adopted. We're now back on the main motion as amended. We have a number of folks in the queue. Ms. Brawley.
Thanks. Just briefly, to the point about this being about workforce recruitment and retention, that was a big focus of discussion in April during first quarter budget revisions, and the reason this money exists is because there were some specific choices put forward by the prior administration that we opted not to enact at that time. So I'm glad that we did not, because I think it allowed for really being able to target these funds, to be able to look fairly across multiple departments and really dig into those issues. So I'm excited about the work of the Office of Equity and Inclusion there, and also excited to see that when we do bring funding ideas forward, that we can find space for them, even if it's not exactly where the original intent was. So yeah, just really excited to see this, and wanted to circle back to kind of why this money exists in the first place. Thanks.
Mr. Rowland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I was going to comment on that a little bit too, but Anna kind of said most of what I needed to say. Basically, this was money that we had appropriated for the time to ourselves to kind of hold, but with the intent that it would be used on recruitment and retention efforts. And I think, for sure, that fire department program is very valuable. We received many emails of support during the budget process from firefighters saying this was a really helpful program to be able to have access to. So want to keep that. I think that is a big part of retention there. But I also want to speak to the second part of this, the appropriation to the Office of Equity and Inclusion, and sort of what I will hope hope will come out of that. We've talked a lot about our HR processes and how difficult it is for folks to actually get hired by the municipality, and not be screened out automatically by the software that we have. And some folks, I think, will recall, we even had a former assembly member, interim assembly member, who said, I can't get hired by the municipality. Why are these processes so difficult to navigate? So I certainly hope that some of that work will be targeted in that piece as well. And I guess with that, I will move a second floor amendment, and that would just be to replace, and maybe this could be Scrivener's, I don't know, but what I'd like to do is replace throughout where it says Office of Equity and Justice, replace that with Office of Equity and Inclusion to reflect that new title of that department.
I think that we can just do that. Madam Clerk, is that of your opinion? Sure. Yeah, because we amended the code between...
So we can just change it automatically?
Yeah,
fantastic.
so we'll just go ahead and take care of that. The revisor can achieve that outcome.
Okay, great. That's all I got. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Okay. Is there any other comments? Hearing and seeing none, members may proceed to vote. Hold on, I do have one last thing to say. This is an interesting appropriation because it has a little bit of the baggage of previous relationships and processes in it. And the amendment that was made by Ms. Zalatel was the product of quiet, diligent outreach by competent members of the administration to kind of point out where we were not communicating as effectively as we could. And that the processes that happened before led us to act in certain ways that we had to. And so this subtle move that happened at the end is actually a hallmark of restoring healthy relationships between the branches of government. And it's in the hands of diplomats who did lion's work to achieve that outcome. So I'll just say that, my veiled language, much was achieved in creating harmony through this project. Okay, thank you, everybody. Now, members may proceed to vote. On a vote of 12-0 and the youth member votes
Yes.
yes, AR 2024-378 as amended has passed the body. Now, that concludes the consent agenda. However, I do believe I see a number of students in the chamber. If you're a student here for a class, would you come forward and introduce yourself, tell us what class you're here and what school you're from? The microphone's not on, so there's a little green button that'll turn the light on. Welcome, everybody. Little green button first to turn the microphone on, the green button. Okay, good. And now just tell us your name, what school you're from, what class you're here for.
All right, I came from Service High School for US Gov.
Hi there, welcome.
Yeah, my name is Jan. I'm here from Service, and I'm also here for US Gov.
Thank you. Welcome.
My name's Megan. I'm also from Service, and I'm also here for US Gov.
Welcome.
My name's Springer. I am also here from Service and for US Gov.
Welcome.
My name's Jane, and I'm from Service and in US Gov too.
Welcome.
My name is Ethan. I'm here for Service and US Gov.
Welcome.
My name is Max. I'm here from Service and also for US Gov.
Welcome. Thank you, everybody. And normally we wouldn't get through it this quickly. This is one of those nights. So this is a more serene meeting than some others. Okay, so I'm asked by a member to take up item 11A quickly. It's just a postponement. So we'll take up 11A. 11A is AO 2024-58, an ordinance authorizing retention of tax foreclosed parcels for public purposes.
Waive reading.
Thank you. Ms. Zalatel.
I move to postpone to the meeting of 12/17.
Second.
Motion to postpone by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Voland. Any discussion?
Briefly, this needed a legislative fix which was introduced tonight. And then once that code fix goes in, assuming it passes, then we'll be able to take this up. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, members may proceed to vote. On a vote of 12 to 0, and the youth member votes
Yes?
yes, AO 2024-58 has been postponed to the meeting of December 17th. Okay, we'll now take a break for a regularly scheduled dinner break and be back in about 20 to 30 minutes to finish our agenda. Thank you.
Sometimes the world moves too quickly, and I know it's not like the earth is turning slow.
Next up on the agenda, we have item 11B. 11B is Resolution AR 2024-350, a resolution of the Anchorage Assembly adopting the 2025 state legislative program for the municipality of Anchorage. This item was postponed from 11/19. There's no motion pending. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve the S version with Exhibit B.
Second.
So there is a motion to approve the S version with Exhibit B by Ms. Brawley, seconded by Ms. Salatil. Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thank you. Just getting back to my notes. So this is an updated version of the 2025 legislative program. I will briefly speak to our process and what's in it, and then we can get into any other discussion. So first I want to thank everybody in both branches who contributed to the program this year, really made it a smooth process. In particular, I want to thank Mr. Nolan Clauda, who not only had to jump right into this work, among other things, when he started as the mayor's policy director, but also really did a lot of the heavy lifting and coordination with stakeholders to map out what we think the community's priorities should be. So really appreciation to him in particular, and of course all of our team who contributed. Thanks to our legislative services team for supporting the committee work, communicating with members to collect our priorities, and quickly producing another beautiful revised program, which you'll see in Exhibit B, which is an AIM with the information, and of course we'll have a full color version when we're done. So second, I'll just briefly cover, there's several changes in this version that you'll see. We last presented the original version at a November 22nd work session. Exhibit B, AIM, gives a detailed list of those changes, but I'll pull out the highlights. The biggest change is how we package the top priorities. So we met with the mayor and appreciated that conversation. We decided to shift gears from our top 3 approach, which we used in last year's program, and we call out 2 broad areas of priorities. First, a safe and secure Anchorage, which includes our ask for snow removal on state roads and energy investment. And our second one is strengthening our workforce, addressing stable schools funding and defined benefits for public employees. So all of these were already in the document, but we made a choice to shift the top level priorities so that these really appear and stand out on that first page. The other changes really reflect what members had brought up in the work session. We added a section to establish requesting that we establish road safety corridors, referenced urban interfaces for wildfire mitigation, updated the port information, and adjusted some of the district priorities. So once the program is adopted by the Assembly, the final document will be printed by our reprographics team in-house, and then we'll be ready to share with legislators at next week's luncheon on Monday. So I urge your support to adopt the legislative program tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else? So I would like to ask someone to make an amendment for me. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. There is one district-specific project that it just isn't developed fully enough to make it into the final program at this time. So I'd like to ask Mr. Wallen to make an amendment to remove the Westchester Lagoon boat dock.
So moved.
Second.
So there's a motion to amend on my behalf by Mr. Wolin and seconded by Ms. Brawley, and I just will say that the line item that was proposed for that item was $15,000, and it simply just doesn't make any sense. It's not, the project makes sense to me, but the scope as drafted doesn't make any sense, and so I think it's not ripe for presentation to the legislature. Any objection to the amendment? Hearing and seeing none, the amendment has passed. Any further discussion on the motion? No further discussion, then members may proceed to vote. On a vote of, oh wait, it's not done.
George?
Mr. Martinez? On a vote of 12-0 and the youth member votes?
Yes.
Yes, AR 2024-350 as amended has passed the body. Next, we have item 13A. 13A is AO 2024-101, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code Section 10.50.036 to require mandatory ID checks for the service and sale of alcoholic beverages to the premises of all retail licensees within the municipality. This public hearing was continued from the meeting of November 6th. Public hearing is again now open. Anyone wish to be heard on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing hearing none, public hearing on
Mr.
this
Chair,
item is now closed.
I'm aware of there's one person who wanted to testify by phone.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We'll go ahead and call Ms. Hall.
Hello, this is Tiffany.
Hi, Ms. Hall. We're Anchorage Assembly taking testimony for AO 2024-101S. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. My name is Tiffany Hall. I'm the president and CEO of Recover Alaska, an organization working to reduce excessive alcohol use and harms across the state. We are in support of the proposed ordinance to require mandatory ID checks for the service and sale of alcoholic beverages at all retail licensees within the municipality. This will ensure individuals under 21 and individuals who are legally prohibited from drinking alcohol are not served alcohol. Enforcing mandatory ID checks across all retail licensees will not only help keep alcohol out of the hands of youth, thereby reducing incidents of underage drinking, but will also reduce access to alcohol by individuals who have a history of causing harms related to alcohol. Without mandatory ID checks, the horizontal ID, once a red stripe, is basically rendered useless, and people with multiple DUIs or alcohol-related violent crimes may be served alcohol again and again and again. Restricting alcohol access to those legally prohibited from drinking alcohol supports the prevention of many alcohol-related harms, including sexual assault, interpersonal violence, child maltreatment, and potential adverse childhood experiences. This is a common sense shift to municipal code. I have personally waited tables and tended bar, and it is not so difficult to card every person. Anchorage has incredibly high rates of death, violence, and harms associated with alcohol. This body, the Assembly, voted to increase availability of alcohol earlier this year by expanding hours of service, which has been proven in research to increase the harms of alcohol. And I sincerely hope you will also vote for this ordinance to support curbing some of those harms. Recover Alaska sincerely appreciates your support on this important change to Anchorage Municipal Code that will have positive impacts on everyone in Anchorage. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hall. Anyone else wish to be heard? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing none, the public hearing on this item is now closed. So I think for the youth member, generally speaking, we don't have youth members participate on matters of alcohol. And although this one is not on a license or other matter, I think I'm going to ask the youth member not participate on this item just because we keep the boundaries real clear. We don't have a motion on the floor. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the, move to approve.
Move to approve the S.
S, thank you.
Second to Ms. Bronca.
There's a motion to approve the S version by we'll go to Ms. Bronca, and then seconded by Ms. Bradley. You want to speak to it, Ms. Bronca?
Yes, thank you very much. I don't think I can say much more than Ms. Hall shared, but the reason I became interested in this is my good friend Harry Crawford is a neighbor, and he was the original, well, he worked with others in Juneau for 3 years to get the red stripe law passed in 2011. And his interest in this was in reaction to his wife Gwen being hit by a drunk driver after leaving a Christmas program and nearly losing her life. A year of coming back, having to go down to the lower 48 to try to rehabilitate. She had to live in Mary Conrad Center for a time, and this was all due to a drunk driver. And alcoholism is a disease, and it is an easy step to try to keep alcohol out of the hands of people who do not have control of themselves with it by checking these IDs. So the red stripe is what this originally started as, and if you had an alcohol violation, you would carry a red stripe on your license. When Anchorage Assembly first heard this in 2013, we bantered around, and it ended up, there were lots of changes coming to, what's the title? I'm sorry. Title IV. And so the decision was made that we would start with liquor stores or package stores, and it would be mandatory IDs, whether you looked 30 or younger or older, so that if you had that red stripe, you would be limited from purchasing. It was always said in all the paperwork that we read that we would circle back and expand this to establishments that serve alcohol, including bars and restaurants and brew pubs, but we never came back to it. So here we are in 2024, and I think it's high time that we expand it, that this mandatory IT check happens. The big picture is, alcohol has a cost in our society. I don't want to tell anybody what they do, but if they may be out there harming others because they cannot control themselves with alcohol, then they should be stopped. And that's much easier than trying to catch someone on the road. Instead, making sure they have limits to having accessibility to alcohol would be the best way. I really appreciate the co-sponsors for their work on, especially Member Brawley, who has a very good understanding of alcohol laws and worked hard with the industry to change Title IV. And I certainly hope that we can make this happen. I think it's a natural step, and I don't think it's that onerous to check an ID. Thanks.
All right, Ms. Brawley.
Thanks. I'll briefly cover an S version, and then we have an amendment. So in the S version that you have before you, it was introduced last meeting. It doesn't change the fundamentals of the ID check, but what it does do is it adds something that we found was actually missing in local code for alcohol licenses, but is in place for marijuana licenses and childcare and other license types where you have a business and there's enforcement staff going and checking compliance. So what it does is it adds the ability, basically puts a tool in the toolbox for enforcement staff to issue a warning instead of simply automatically issuing a ticket or a violation. So certainly there's situations where that violation would be appropriate if there's something egregious. Other situations, maybe a good operator, and this was a slip up, that it really gives more flexibility. And just to be clear, that addition is not specific to the ID check. It would apply to any license compliance. So that's what the S version does. And with that, I'm going to move Brawley, Bronca, Johnson Amendment number 1.
Second.
Motion to amend by Ms. Brawley, seconded by Mr. Boland. Ms. Brawley.
Thanks. This is really clarifying language, providing flexibility. I think that the goal is not to make folks check ID 5 times for the same person who's on premises, for example, but to make sure that the licensee has some choices. They could check ID at the bar, they could check when somebody orders a drink if it's at a restaurant, or when they're paying at the counter. So really just making clear that that is a decision. As long as the law is being complied with, that's an operating decision. So that's what this amendment does.
Mr. Vaughn, on the amendment or the main? All right, any discussion on the amendment? Hearing and no discussion, I'd like to ask unanimous consent. Any objection to the amendment? There's no objection to the amendment. The amendment is adopted. We're now back on the main motion as amended. Mr. Voland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to say that I appreciated the testimony that we heard tonight from Ms. Hall. I intend to support this, and I think that it is also consistent with this body's desire to see a reduction in pedestrian deaths. We've had 15 this year, and in a few of those instances, they involved driving while intoxicated. So I think this is responsible to many of the alcohol-related harms that happen in our community. So to me, it seems like a reasonable step. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, members may proceed to vote. On a vote of 12-0, AO 2024-101S as amended has passed the body. Next, we have item 13B. Item 13B is AO 2024-105. An ordinance, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly proposing a dedicated property tax measure to be submitted to the qualified voters of the municipality that would enact a sales and use taxes of 3% in the aggregate on the sale of goods and services within the municipality.
Waive reading.
Thank you. I just want to communicate that we have a two work sessions scheduled for this Friday. There is no intent tonight to take action on this item. The public hearing will be continued to a meeting. There's some discussion about whether that will be the December 17 meeting or a meeting in January. And so when this public hearing is open, you may testify, but you may only testify once. And so if the item is continued and changes substantively, but not substantively enough to warrant a new public hearing, then you won't be able to testify again. So the public hearing on this item is now open. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes to go ahead and pull the mic down, and it's not on. There's a green button there. It's on now.
Thank you. My name is Paula Birmingham. I live in District 3 over by the airport. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening about the proposed tax, sales and use tax ordinance. I have concerns about how this tax will impact many families in Anchorage and our future generations. Sales and use taxes are regressive for everyone, but most especially for lower income households. These folks will have to spend more of their budget on sales tax than a higher income household. Sales and use taxes aren't just bad for those living below the poverty line, it's bad for our local economy. We will end up with higher rates of poverty and crime. Our population in Anchorage is declining, and with that, it seems unlikely that the municipality will be able to raise the amounts of revenue from the sales and use tax envisioned in this ordinance. Enacting a sales and use tax will also encourage more residents to leave the city. Our winters are long and dark, and imposing this tax will be a discouragement to some residents. Furthermore, investing 1/3 of the sales and use tax revenues into special projects seems incongruous given the current homeless population. We see them all over the city, and it is difficult to justify grand special projects when these folks need serious permanent help, not in the form of just a hotel room for the winter, but more in offering a long-term solution to getting clean, sober, and staying that way. Property tax relief is a great idea. However, if this tax is passed and is effective, for example, in July of 2026, Property owners will not see any property tax relief until 2027, and only for the amount of sales and use taxes collected in the previous taxing period. And in the meantime, property owners will get to pay an additional 3% sales and use tax, along with higher property taxes, and as a lose-lose situation. Passing this ordinance and asking the voters to approve it will be a blight on Anchorage. We will still have the homeless, more taxes to pay, a declining population, and will cost even more to live here. Yet we will certainly have some grand special projects to admire. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes. There's the green button there. You got to press the green button. There you go. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Sean McDowell, and I live in Northeast Anchorage in the South Muldoon area. I'd like to start by saying that I don't disagree with the idea of implementing a sales tax in Anchorage. I think it can be a really great way to increase the city's revenue to tackle challenges that we're facing. However, I think where I begin my disagreement with this AO is the targets for that revenue. I'm here as a private citizen, but in my work, I work with people who are chronically homeless, people who are chronically incarcerated, people who are in poverty. And I don't see this AO addressing their concerns. You know, while I understand people may want property tax relief, and I understand that people want more special projects, those aren't addressing the needs and the challenges that we're facing as a city. The short list of special projects that's been released so far included things like a Nordic swim facility, things like more programming downtown in the arts. And while these are great things, these aren't addressing those challenges. So I'm here today to ask you to vote this down in the future, as it's an AO that puts the needs of the people who are doing the best in our community above those who don't have those opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes. It's on. Oh, you just turned it off. Green button. There you go.
There we go. Good evening. My name is Jen Motika. I'm a business owner, community activator, and mom, or mom, for those of you with kids, you know. I'm here in support of Project Anchorage. I'm also part of Choose Anchorage Committee, and I've been a part of a lot of discussions. I know many of you, I've seen many of you out and about at community events, and I know you all have a deep love of this city. And what Project Anchorage does is, it's the physical representation of that love. We need to invest back in this city in order to show others why we love being here, to keep those who are here, to recruit those who might be interested. You've heard a lot of data, there's been a lot of discussion, so I don't need to go into all that. What I do want to do is urge the doing. A lot of talk, sounds like there will be more talk. You'll hear from a lot more people. A lot of people have had input. But I ask you, is this a group of doers or is this a group of talkers? And I'd love to see the doing happen, because the longer we wait, the more we fall behind. And I think you all know, and it's been brought up tonight, the issues facing our city. And in order to remedy those, we need to shine a little light and produce something that we can be proud of. And through Project Anchorage, I believe that that can happen, as well as helping those, property owners, helping businesses, helping families. This is a great place to live, but we need to show that. And so I think these projects that have been submitted by the citizens are their hope for what this community could look like in the future. And so I hope we can all build that together. So that's That's my reasoning for being here tonight, because I believe in that city, and that's hopefully what we can all build together. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes. Hello, Mr. Featherly. You just turned it off. Everyone just don't touch the button on the mic.
Don't touch the
It'll be
mic.
fine. You can change the mic pitch so you speak into it, but don't touch the button.
Don't touch the mic.
Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Members of the Assembly, my name is Walter Featherly. I reside at 11430 Trails End on the hillside, and I have been a resident of Anchorage since attending and graduating from East Anchorage High School in the early 1970s. I am a member of the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors, and I have been involved with Project Anchorage since Assemblyman Randy Solt and Felix Rivera brought the concept to the AEDC board last year. I care deeply about Anchorage, and it is because of this commitment that I urge you to adopt AO 2024-105. There was a time when Anchorage believed in itself. In the early 1980s, I served on the Anchorage Library Advisory Board and the building committee for the construction of the new Z.J. Lusac Library, a part of former Mayor George Sullivan's Project 80s. At the time, the optimism in Anchorage was palpable. We were growing rapidly, and we were all anxious to help guide that growth towards amenities that would make Anchorage an even better place to live. During that same period that Project 80s was underway, Anchorage was swept up in a movement that Governor Ronald Reagan first championed in California in the late 1970s, and that then President Ronald Reagan took to the rest of the country. The core of that movement was an anti-tax, no trust in government movement. Since becoming engulfed by that anti-tax movement, which has been exacerbated by a sharp decrease in funding or sharp decreases in funding from the state of Alaska, Anchorage has, over the years and the decades, faced a growing struggle to fund even the most basic of public services. Lacking funding for basic services, Anchorage has, but with one notable exception, the Denina Center, made no further investments in our quality of life since the completion of the Project 80s facilities. We're at a turning point. With basic services that are strained to the breaking point, Anchorage residents are now voting with their feet and they're leaving. The electorate is once again ready to accept the notion, I believe, that our local government has a role to play in creating and maintaining a quality of life in our community. But that does not mean that trust can be taken for granted. The Project Anchorage ordinance that is before you is a tax measure that carefully balances property tax relief with an investment in our community. I urge you to please support AO 2024-105. Thank you.
Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Julie Haskett. I am a 38-year resident of Anchorage and a homeowner and a property taxpayer. I'm also on the Chamber's Board of Directors, which I know supports this, and I'm here as an individual. Nobody is investing in Anchorage right now. Not the state, very little the feds, and we really need to get back to investing in ourselves. Property taxpayers foot the bill for most everything in this community. We also fund the bonds, and I vote for bonds in every election since I've lived here. People are leaving, as been stated, in great numbers out of Anchorage and out of Alaska. My daughters are 26 and 30. They left Anchorage to pursue higher education and careers, and they're not coming back because there's just nothing here for them. They don't see a growing, thriving community. As was stated by Mr. Featherly, we haven't really built anything since the Denina Center. The Anchorage Parks Foundation has done some really cool parks, and I want to give them credit. but we haven't done anything major in a very long time. And we know the private sector is not going to invest in us if we don't invest in ourselves. I recognize the concern over lower income. I get that. I think that's important to consider. But I know there's many exemptions in this bill, and you're discussing like a hardship exemption. I think that's all important to talk about. But cities across the country and cities across Alaska are doing this. They have sales tax. We're one of the very few who does not. I also want to say that I do believe it benefits renters, because when you have a growing, thriving city, that benefits all of us. People want to come here, they want to live here, they want to have their families growing up here. So everybody's going to be better off in a city that's thriving and growing versus one that's kind of dying on the vine. This is a unique opportunity to relieve the burden on property taxpayers, fund some projects to make our city more vibrant and moving forward like it was in the 80s, like Mr. Featherly mentioned, when we had a lot of optimism. And we can capture some of the money from the many, many tourists who come here throughout the year. I ask you, if not now, when? And if not this, what? When will we invest in our city? And at the very least, please allow the voters of Anchorage to make this decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Constant. Assembly members, my name is Ryan Strong. I live in Eagle River. I'm here tonight as the current chair of the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation, as well as an interested resident of our city. Other than a few years working around the state, Anchorage and Eagle River has been my home since 1986. My wife and I are raising our 2 daughters. One's a college sophomore, one's a senior in high school. And like most parents, nothing would make us happier than them choosing Anchorage as their long-term home and as their place to, build their careers. Anchorage is an amazing community with so much to offer, but it's slowly moving in a direction that concerns me. Every year we experience out-migration of working-age people. Housing affordability is a real challenge, and it's getting harder every year for first-time home buyers to afford entry-level housing. Our public facilities and infrastructures are being maintained, but there's a lack of investment in new amenities that would benefit existing residents and attract new people and families to Anchorage. I believe that it's time to change this dynamic. If we as residents of our city want to improve, we must be willing to invest ourselves in the future. The days of expecting large capital windfalls from the state or from the federal government, those are over. If we want the future to look different and better, we have to do it ourselves. Project Anchorage is a path forward for our city. It will provide sustainable and dedicated funding sources for capital investments, which will improve the quality of life for all of our residents. It will provide much needed property tax relief and bring in new revenue from visitors who love coming to our city and will also benefit from the improvements. Furthermore, I believe when everybody's contributing to these projects, it will increase the sense of ownership, agency, and pride that all of our residents have in our great city. So I strongly urge you to support Project Anchorage and pass AO 2024-105 and allow the voters to make the final decision. So thank you for all the work you do. Thank you for your consideration of Project Anchorage and the opportunity to speak this evening.
Mr. Strong, I believe a member has a question for you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Right here.
Yes.
So as we talk about these projects, and I'm asking you because of your role with the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation, how do we make sure, right, when these projects come to fruition, that those folks we're worried about with lower incomes are able to take advantage of these amenities? A lot of the amenities proposed would often have like an admissions fee. And so I'm really trying to reconcile that in my brain. So if you've got some thoughts on that, I would like to hear about it.
And Jenna, our CEO, could probably speak even with more detail to this, but it is a pretty broad and diverse set of proposed projects, and not every project's going to appeal to every single person in the same way. I think there's a good cross-section of those that will be openly and readily available to people without a fee that will benefit them and anyone else here in Anchorage. There are, depending on the project we're talking about, there might be different opportunities to provide access or different ways for folks to use those. I hear what you're saying, and that should be taken into consideration as we look at all of those projects.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
I really want to touch the button so badly. Sorry. So if I accidentally do it, I'm cutting myself off. My name is Jacob Lyon. I live in District 6, right off of Lake Otis and Huffman. I am a husband and a father of 2 boys that both go to Huffman Elementary School. In my day job, I work in the tourism industry, and so we're constantly looking at what the city has to offer. In addition to that, I'm constantly selling this city. I am out there talking to everybody about it. And as I look around the city, there are so many different things that, I think that would be good for residents and good for the community, or good for the tourism guests as well. When I moved up here in 2006, I can remember moving from a small town in Indiana and thinking, man, this city has everything. I thought it was such a cool place to live, and it got its hooks in me, and that's why I'm still here today. I chose to raise my family here, and when I look around now, I think to myself, what would Jacob from 2006 think? Would I have stayed, or would I have moved back home? Because I'm not really sure what I would do right now. I've been a part of the Project Anchorage for a while. I've been a part of the project planning committee, and when we looked at these projects, I sat down with my wife and I said, you know what, when our kids were a lot younger, what was it that you wanted? What was it that would bring you and make you say, hey, we need to stay here? What is it that makes other community or other young families want to stay? When I moved onto the street I live in now, there were 4 other families with young kids, and none of them are there anymore. Every one of them has moved on to other places. And we've got to find a way to bring those folks back. I think there's an idea here. I've been sitting and listening for the last 5 to 10 years about all these different things that, how can we make Anchorage better, whether it was RVSA or whether it was, I can't think of the, Roger Brooks, right? There's all these different ideas of who's coming up here, and here's what Anchorage needs to do. But I think it's time for Anchorage to do what Anchorage does and to come together and rally around these things. I think that there is such an opportunity, and I think that this community is ready to rally around it and bring it back together. Let's talk about some exciting things instead of, the perceived bad things that are going on in the community today. We put a lot of thought into this. I think that there are some real ideas that I would love to see move forward. As I've sat in these meetings forever, there have oftentimes been, hey, we need to be more like Boise. Hey, we need to be more like Spokane. We need to be more like Fort Wayne, Indiana. I've been to Fort Wayne. When are these communities going to start saying, hey, we need to be more like Anchorage? And this is an opportunity for us to actually make a difference. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, William Baxter. I'm from Fairview, and I believe this is called a fair tax. And I've been single all my life, and I've rented all my life. But I always feel guilty about being a renter in Anchorage. And also, I would like to live out in the valley, but I always feel guilty because I work here in Anchorage, and this is my home. Thank you.
Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Erin Baldwin-Day. I am a resident of the Tudor Community Council area in Midtown, and I'd like to shift the focus of our conversation just slightly. I personally am completely fine with paying a sales tax. I'm delighted that the municipality is considering diversifying revenue streams. Where this ordinance feels problematic to me is actually in the breakdown of how the property tax reduction is actually structured. And so most of the conversation around the property tax reduction has suggested that that reduction will accrue largely to property owners, of which I am one. However, the numbers tell a different story, and I think that's germane to the conversation tonight. So based on ICER data from UAA, about 41% of property taxes in this town are paid by resident owners. That means that only 41% of this 2% tax reduction accrues to Anchorage resident owners. The rest accrues to commercial entities, business operations, and non-owner occupied residential properties. What I'm trying to say here is that about 40% of this property tax reduction is actually earmarked for Anchorage homeowners, and the rest will go to businesses who may or may not be controlled by out-of-state entities, and people who don't functionally live in Anchorage. To me, that flies in the face of this concept of Anchorage first, investing in Anchorage first. If 60% of this revenue, a chunk of that will be actually leaving the state in terms of property tax reduction for Walmart and Target and Costco and Home Depot and Widener Apartments. On that note, Widener owns approximately $320 million in real estate holdings in the municipality, which means that Widener alone, which is an international corporation, will actually receive a $1 million annual reduction in property taxes. And that feels deeply problematic to me. So when we break this all down, the Project Anchorage folks are suggesting that this represents about $180 million in additional annual revenue. To put that in perspective, 72 million of that is going to go to tax reduction for businesses, outside corporations, and absentee owners. Only 48 million will actually go to resident owner occupiers. And only slightly more than that will go to our municipal area projects. I'm suggesting that we might come up with a lot of other uses for $72 million if we could find a way to make this tax reduction more specific to resident owner-occupied properties and not to outside entities. Thank you so much for your time.
We have a question for you, Ms. Baldwin.
Yes, of course.
Ms. Alto.
Thank you. I appreciate the stats, but resident owner-occupied tax exemption doesn't take care of an issue around renters. Have you thought about the intersection between those two things?
Yes. And I think what's difficult about that question is that a renter in Anchorage is really not going to benefit from a property tax reduction, period, other than whatever they are able to access through municipal projects. So yeah, there is a very strong correlation there. And I think what I'm trying to point to is the fact that renters will pay taxes twice, once to offset their landlord's property taxes and once for a sales tax.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Will Walker, and I live in Spenard. First, I want to thank the AADC for starting this conversation. I think it's awesome to think about how we can invest in Anchorage, because I think Anchorage is worth investing in. I think it's already a wonderful place to live, but I think it can be even better. And so my concern is really, if this is an investment, how are we making sure that we're getting the best return on that investment? And we're looking at $180 million per year through this tax. And how do we ensure that it's going to actually have compounding returns for our municipality and not just helping out the best off and kind of one-off yearly property tax abatements? And so I want you all to hopefully be considering this as you go into the work sessions and not just accepting potentially as it stands, but looking how can we get the best returns. I wrote a few ideas in an op-ed that came out today in the ADN. I'll try to expand rather than just rehash all those. But I think this is an opportunity for us to really address some of our biggest concerns around housing, behavioral health, homelessness, education. So one idea, and something that's been used in other jurisdictions, including starting in Maryland, is using a revolving fund to help reduce the cost to build multifamily development so that more multifamily units get developed, and in return, a portion of those are dedicated perpetually to affordable housing. And then it's a renewable fund. It's a revolving fund. So it's not just used one time, but then it's a fund that can keep being used to, in that case, build more housing. And I don't see why that also can't be generalized to address some of our other problems. There's a similar kind of use of a fund in Texas to fund school capital investments. And so I think it'd be wise and prudent to think, how can we maximize this as an investment? How can we get compounding returns on this $180 million per year? Further and related, I think, it's, fine if people get a property tax cut, more money in their pockets is fine, but we're not going to see larger returns as a community from that. Versus if we pool those resources, potentially via community council, and instead an average neighborhood could have $1.5 million to invest in larger projects as a community that could lead to greater quality of life improvements, potentially higher property value down the line, and hopefully broaden our base over the long term than just a short-term interest of reducing property tax for those individuals, which is only a subset of our population and not helping renters, as has been discussed, and really the broader Anchorage community. So I'd urge you all to consider how we can keep making this proposal better, because we should be investing in our city. I think we deserve it, but I think we can keep doing better. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Jan. I'm a student at Robert Service High School, and I live on the south side of Anchorage. And I feel obligated to speak on behalf of the Service High School students. I believe that Project Anchorage could be a smart move for our city, especially for students like me. For starters, it could provide a stable source of revenue to Anchorage. The money could go directly into improving schools. That would be beneficial, because just think of what we could do with newer textbooks, newer technology, nicer facilities, and a safer and more modern environment. It could also help support extracurricular activities like sports, music, and clubs. Those are essential for student growth and ultimately the success of Anchorage. Project Anchorage isn't just about funding our city, it's about investing in education and giving students like me more opportunities to succeed. Thank you.
Hello there, welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name's Yasmin Radbot. I live in Nunaca Valley. I've been in Alaska and Anchorage for around 2 years. I'm from DC. My grandfather helped build the Alcan in World War II. I work for the state. I work with seniors and elders all over the state. I live here in Nunaca Valley. And, for elders who are coming from rural communities, like Anchorage is the end of the road. If you can't afford to live in your home community anymore, if your hub community doesn't have the long-term care supports that you need, for example, right, you end up in Anchorage. And my understanding of Project Anchorage being based on Oklahoma City, the more, times that voters decided to continue their sales tax, every time it impacted a greater range of services in their local community. So I'm really excited that Anchorage has the opportunity, hopefully voters will get to vote on this, and that if they continue to vote it in over time, that we would be reaching those constituents that I also I feel very strongly about, especially for elders who are experiencing homelessness here. So thank you.
There's a question for you. Ms. Radbaugh? Yeah, Ms. Alatil.
Thank you. I appreciate you bringing up elders and seniors. Is there a set of benefits you see elders taking advantage of, like a particular state program or something like that? And the reason I ask is I'm interested in, someone's mentioned a hardship exemption or a universal application and tying it back to things people are already eligible for, but I'm not as familiar with the elder space.
Other than, senior benefits and, those general that are very accessible going through the Aging and Disability Resource Centers, that's where we refer, elders, and that's how they get into the system.
Great.
Yeah,
that's helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Amber Christensen. I live in Spenard area, and I just wanted to encourage you guys to think of this as an investment in the people and not just statistics. I wish I had the numbers for this, but I didn't prepare anything to come up here, but I volunteer at the Hope Center. I work with the VA. I am always downtown, and I see a lot of familiar faces amongst the homeless people, and I think passing this would do a lot to generate income and be able to use it to help those homeless people, in addition to, like the youngin said, improving schools, maybe keeping some schools open and all that jazz. So thanks.
Anyone else tonight? Anyone at all? All right, to the movers. Is there a motion?
Motion to postpone to the meeting of...
Motion to continue the public hearing?
Yeah, sorry, motion to continue the public hearing to the meeting of January 7th.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, so there's a motion by Mr. Salt to continue the meeting to January 7th, seconded by Mr. Rivera. Mr. Salt, you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I really have appreciated the public process, and we want to continue that public process. There's 2 work sessions this Friday. There's an S version coming forward. There's amendments coming forward. Additional amendments have already been placed out for people to review. We look forward to the continued debate and the suggestions. That's probably the part that I have appreciated. I know Member Rivera has appreciated the most, is people said, hey, this isn't great. This could make it better. And that's the part we're looking for, is what can make this better. So we really appreciate those suggestions and look forward to more as we continue this journey and collaborative process. And I can't remember who said it, but if not now, and if not this, then what? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give the voters an option and ultimately let the voters decide. So that's why we'd like to postpone this, to continue that process. Although we are cutting it close to getting on the April ballot, that's a risk we're willing to take. Chair?
Thank you. Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So on top of what Member Salt stated, well before January 7th, we should have everything for the public available to review and digest, including the final S version, any other possible versions that I've heard members are possibly coming up with, any amendments that folks may have that they want to bring forward. All of that will be available to the public, so that way on January 7th, members of the public can advocate for the version that they might prefer, any amendments that they like, etc. And want to echo Member Salt's invitation that if folks want to continue having conversations about this, I am more than willing to have those conversations with community folks, community groups, to see what we can do to make this proposal even better. Thank you.
Ms. Bronga.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for the sponsors, and I'm not familiar, but there's a lot of amendments swirling around, and you've seen them because they've been around. Are you changing your original and creating an S based on some stuff that you see that you like, or it seems like it will go more smoothly if some of the broadly accepted amendments just got wrapped in earlier?
Through the chair, yes, simple answer. We're trying to make this better. There's a broader team behind us, and we're trying to adopt as many of these suggestions as we can. At the same time, we're also not trying to be too prescriptive. We realize that implementation of this will be long and difficult, and we don't want to make unreasonable requests or paint the implementation team into a box or a corner. So allow some flexibility, because if this works out like Oklahoma City, they're on 30 years, and we can't foresee that far in the future. Thanks.
Ms. Alto.
Thanks. Is it the sponsor's intention to have introduced into the agenda for 1217 any substitute versions so they are out in the public sphere through our public, our public portal, et cetera?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the Vice Chair, yes.
Mr. Voland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that I appreciated a lot of the testimony that we heard tonight. And I think, I guess what I would just kind of say as we postpone this, or we continue the public hearing rather, and we look forward to the work sessions that we'll have on Friday, is that when community advocates bring something to the Assembly, there's no guarantee that your original proposal is going to be the final proposal, because at the end of the day, there's 12 members who represent different constituencies, right? And there's sometimes differences of opinions within our own constituencies. And so, yeah, I guess just to say I appreciate folks who are speaking up and giving input. And I hope that the advocates of this, however this lands, if it does move forward, you'll be able to embrace it and get the word out. Thanks.
So I'll just speak to my concern continues to be much like a testifier, Ms. Baldwin Day, that 72 million of this 120 million of the 180 million would go to a handful of property owners. One of those 72 million would go to one person. Think about that. One person would receive 1/72nd part of that property tax relief. that to me is just, I can't get there. So for the members who are working on amendments, I don't know how you square that, but that is the biggest hurdle for me in getting to yes. So I had hoped the amendment would be to postpone this to the meeting of December 17th because I will not be there. And then I wouldn't have to vote. But with that in mind, as it's going to come up on the 7th, I think Ms. Zalatel's point of getting S versions in sooner than later is important because a substantive enough change could cause a new public hearing process, which could then push the clock out and make it hard. So if items aren't introduced by the 17th, there's risk in time. There's still the meeting of the 21st, I think. And so there's one backstop for you if there are intents. And so for my part, that's the biggest hurdle. I have the equity questions. There have been some pretty inspired ideas of how to achieve them. I haven't seen them in writing anywhere, but I don't know how to get past that one person receiving that much of a benefit. So, Mr. Bookman.
I guess one of the main concerns that I have as a representative of the youth in Anchorage is sort of the base motivations, I guess, of a bill like this. It was mentioned earlier by someone from Service that they would like to see some of this sort of go towards the education system. It's been mentioned that people would like to see this go towards relief locally. However, everything in this item, as far as I can tell, is still proposing that it goes towards, again, these large-scale projects that to me seem fundamentally impractical. Anchorage is where I've grown up, and it is a city that I love very much, but this seems fundamentally impractical in some regards to continue with this. A property tax break is not something that I believe there should be a fundamental objection to. However, there is already a current tax levied on both systems of car rental and on the hotel industry in order to focus on, tourism and extract revenue from that. And I would question the base motives for what we've seen here proposed, as it seems like it mostly will again benefit a select few property owners.
So, yeah, I've just received a kind of comment from a member that we'd be careful not to debate. The motion we're debating is the motion to postpone. And so, thank you for your comments. I will offer that for the young person who spoke, there are limits under the state law and constitution about what can be spent on education, and so it's unlikely that any of these funds would be driven towards education because of those state laws. It's a good idea, and Anchorage contributes 100% of our maximum legal allowable contribution, and hopefully will continue to do so as long as Anchorage is a city, because our youth are our key investment. However, we're constrained. So to that, if there's no other debate on the motion to postpone, members may proceed to vote. On a vote of 12-0 and the youth member votes.
Yes.
The AO 2024-105 will be back before the Assembly January 7th. Next, we have item 14A. 14A is AO 2024-106, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly clarifying Anchorage Municipal Code subsection 2.20.5D regarding political activities by staff of the municipal clerk's office. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing none, public hearing is now closed. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Boland.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So I've been working with the clerk to introduce this item. We have some interesting structures within the branch that we have clerk staff who, when they're employed by the municipality, are sworn an oath to be nonpartisan. And then we have temporary employees, and we have employees who are year-round employees but who work only for a short time of the year for us for various project selections and other elements depending on what the clerk's office needs. And the way that the code reads currently, people who don't work for us but or only work for us for a portion of the year are constrained in their First Amendment right to speak in other times of the year when they're not actively employed. So what this ordinance does is it narrows the restriction to when they're employed by the municipality and working. And so it's a way to narrowly construct the abrogation of their First Amendment right to when they have an action that they're working on before us. Ms. Brawley.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate this ordinance coming forward, and it really provides clarity around the rules. And to your point about First Amendment, I think it's really important that folks retain, regardless of what their job is, that they, to the extent possible, retain those personal rights of expression and participation in our system, especially when it's really outside the scope of the Muni's purview, that the specific scope of their job and really is unrelated. And so yeah, I appreciate this clarity, and hopefully this also helps our employees be really clear about what they can and can't do. Thank you.
All right, next. Oh, anyone else? Seeing no one in the queue, members may proceed to vote. On a vote of 12-0, and the youth member votes
Yes.
yes, AO 2024-106 has passed the body. Next, we have AO 2024-109, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending and updating Anchorage Municipal Code Title 28 Elections. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on this item? Anyone at all? Mr. Edgington, welcome. Please state your name, what party time you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, speaking as an individual. I appreciate the changes in this AO. I would like to just make another, I guess, appeal to the body. Probably this may not be the right mechanism for it, but it really is time that we went to ranked choice voting at assembly and mayoral elections in Anchorage. I think there's been a question for a while about how Anchorage would vote if there was an attempt to repeal ranked choice voting, and we've seen those numbers, and by a margin of over 11%, the districts in Anchorage voted to maintain ranked choice voting. So I think it's very clear what the population here want. It's time to do it. My understanding is for assembly members, it can be done by code. For the mayor, there is probably a charter change that's needed. But I would just encourage you to think about it. If it's too late to do it for this, there are other opportunities. If it's not too late to do it for this, then perhaps an S1 could come along. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none. Public hearing on this item is now closed. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Rivera, seconded by Ms. Zaltel. I would like, oh yes, the S version.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask Mr. Northup to come up and just kind of walk us through, if you don't mind, Mr. Rivera, kind of the framework of the changes for the record.
And this is the S version. So there's just some slight changes within the S version that were missed or inadvertently left out in the original. And it's simply just changing some language in, so it's basically amending a couple sections to just refer to, or to take vote by fax and vote by email out, and to place electronic transmission in, since the original AO was looking to bring in a secure document portal as a means for electronic transmission as well. So we just, the idea is just to combine it together and make sure everything within Title 28 matches.
All right, and but not just the S version, the main. What are the other changes?
Yes,
yeah, like
the original.
What's the gist of the change we're proposing today?
Sorry, my apologies. So I discussed changing the section from, or the vote by fax, vote by email section to vote by electronic transmission to bring in the ability to use a secure document portal to transmit ballots in a secure and safe way to our overseas military and overseas voters to hopefully increase voter participation in those categories. The other changes, the other major changes is to the contest procedure. Essentially, this is introducing a $1,000 deposit that is required to bring forth a contest
There is currently a deposit in the section regarding recounts requested, and we were the only jurisdiction in Alaska without a fee to bring a contest. And we've had a few contests come before the Assembly, so the idea for this fee was to help protect taxpayer dollars and to ensure that the actual contest is well pled and essentially is bringing forth something that the Assembly can actually look into under municipal law. Also with that comes there's a threshold requirement that the municipal attorney would look into the contest and then bring forth their, essentially their opinions to the Assembly prior to certifying the election. And then the other part is with that $1,000 deposit, if there's any money left after a contest goes through the process, that money goes back to the people bringing the contest. If it's a valid contest, that deposit goes right back to those people bringing a contest. It's the same with the recount provision as well that's currently in municipal code. Let's see. The other major portions are simply bringing in more election, not election contests, essentially bringing in more election offenses into code that were left out when the original election offenses were brought in. These were left out because they are felonies under state law and the municipality can't prosecute felonies. So I've brought them in under what the threshold that the municipality can prosecute. So, and these essentially, we had a couple contests and a couple issues come forth. Recently, the Assembly looked into potential concerns of people buying votes. So part of this talks to that and allows the municipality to investigate and prosecute that without relying on the state. That's the major changes.
Thank you, Mr. Northup. Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Quality Municipal Services and Ethics and Elections Committee reviewed this ordinance at our meeting in September as part of the annual Title 28 review and update. As you can read in the AMs for the original and S versions, there are a variety of changes made, which Mr. Northup walked us through. A huge thanks to the elections team for your work on this regular annual update over our elections code, and I urge a yes vote. With regard to the comment that was made during public testimony on ranked choice, this is actually something that's already come up in the committee as a discussion point, and certainly, for at least speaking for myself, I was waiting for the November election results to be finalized before possibly pursuing this action. I would say it's not, we can't do it in this particular ordinance because it probably requires a whole lot of different changes, but certainly something I think to explore. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Braga.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question. So with the electronic transmission and the secure portal, will it speed the timeline of getting those overseas votes in? I guess you're not going to require it, so there probably still will be that lag. Is it 2 weeks after the election? Could you just explain how that's going to work?
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. So essentially the way people have to request a vote by email or a ballot by vote by email or vote by fax is they have to submit an application. We're going to do that same process with the secure document portal, but once we have that application and once we confirm the voter is who they say they are, we are able to then just send them a link through email that will then allow them to open up the portal essentially anywhere they are. So it's much quicker, and it's all done through the portal, so they don't have to print anything out to mail back to us or email back to us. So it's a much simpler process.
So, Is anyone else in the queue for the question? And Ms. Brawley, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, it wasn't working. Yeah, I just wanted to say very briefly that I really appreciate the overview in the Quality Municipal Services Committee. I think it really shows kind of in terms of process, a great use of that committee to review an ordinance in detail. And then also I think it's really important to keep our elections secure, so I appreciate that your team in the clerk's office is doing that, and also that we make sure that we're not interfering with people's ability to vote and exercise their rights. So I'm really excited about this this more secure version of electronic submission. So thank you very much.
All right, so I do have myself in the queue. Just briefly to speak to a matter just related to the question of the ranked choice voting and decisions to make electoral policy changes. And I think that it is time for the municipality, the assembly, and our community to contemplate that question. And the reality is changing election policy on a dime is bad practice. We have to take our time to thoughtfully go through the process and question ourselves and hear from the community and do all of the work before we make changes. And our elections updates happen in a cycle, and they happen so that they're completed before the election begins in January. And so the election is beginning in just a couple of weeks, really, 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks. And so it is just too soon to the testifier's question to act now. There are mock elections that have to be done, new ballots that have to be drafted, new computer programs that have to be updated, all of the things, and they all have to work when you declare a vacancy in an election. And so for those who want to see it now, a little bit of patience. For those who don't want to see it, you'll have an opportunity to speak to us, and the conversation will be before us. So, and I don't know if there's anyone else in the queue. If there's not, we have this year's Title 28 updates before us. Members may proceed to vote. On a vote of 11-1, and the youth member votes
Yes?
yes, AO 2024-109S has passed the body. Thank you, Mr. Northup.
Thank you.
Next, we have item 14C. 14C is AO 2024-111, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 12.70 to update the area designated as transit supportive corridors and expand access to tax incentives for multifamily, affordable, and workforce housing. The public hearing on this item is now open. It's the intent of the sponsor to continue this item, but we can go ahead and hear from a couple folks. Yeah. Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you to the chair. My name's Elena Plachet, and I live in Muldoon area. And I just want to urge my support for this AO and to include my neighborhood in the Muldoon area. I arguably would say it already kind of follows the transit supportive development planning principle, and would love to see it included in, writing as that. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Sean McDowell, and I live in South Muldoon, in the area that would be connected, so South Muldoon being connected to Tudor. I think that if you travel along this corridor naturally, one would think already that it is connected, so this is a pretty common sense AO. Additionally, I think that anything that is allowing us to further or increase multifamily development, further or increase pedestrian-friendly development is great. I think, if you really want to understand the South Muldoon area, being a pedestrian on South Muldoon Road is a great way to do that. I can tell you firsthand, it could be kind of scary. So, anything that lessens that, makes it better for pedestrians, makes it better for the families there, sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Evening. Jason Norris, South Anchorage. Speaking in a personal capacity, but as a professional, I am an economist, and I like that we're subsidizing supply here A lot of times in housing conversations, we talk about subsidizing demand, which can actually make the problem worse. By building more housing stock, you're giving more opportunities for people to live. I like the idea of that. I think the map is substantially correct. I think there are some incremental improvements that could be made. And if there are some of those made, certainly support that. Thinking further into what tax breaks actually look like in order to encourage development, I think that we should take a strong look at converting parking in a built-out environment. Parking lots are our green fields, and so I think that we should encourage redevelopment of those to the extent possible. And I think to get the most out of the map that's being proposed, we need to increase density in these areas. That's a fiscally responsible thing to do if we're going to give tax breaks, is to maximize what we get out of that. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Erin Baldwin-Day, Tudor Community Council area, and as such, I'm actually delighted with the updated transit-supported corridor map because it does include sections of Tudor that were not previously part of the TSC designation. I'm aware of a couple of different development projects happening along that corridor, at least under discussion along that corridor, that will benefit significantly in terms of being able to add density appropriately if this map is updated. And so not only that, but being able to take advantage of some of the tax incentives to really make these projects pencil feels very important since, as we all know, we do have a significant supply issue when it comes to housing in Anchorage. So definitely urge your support, and thank you for the consideration this evening.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard on this item? All right, Mr. Martinez.
Chair, I move to continue the public hearing on December 17th.
Second.
So there's a motion to continue to December 17th by Mr. Martinez. I think the second was Mr. Voland.
Salt.
Oh, Mr. Salt. Okay, thanks. So motion to continue to December 17th by Martinez, seconded by Salt. Mr. Martinez.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to extend appreciation to folks that testified today, and the reason for the delay is aligning with a larger arc of project potentiality with the administration, and so members of the administration will be at this week's CEDC meeting to talk a little bit more about the way this will fit into some of the strategy, and then we'll take action on the 17th, Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Zalato.
Thanks. I would love to see this pushed out to the first meeting in January, if possible, because I want to see how these two things come together and have some time to think about it, think about if I have amendments or want to make any changes and meet the agenda deadlines. And there's just no way I can move that quick for something on the 17th if the intention is to take action on this item. And we don't even have an introduced item from the administration yet. So I don't have their item. So even if they were to present something at CEDC, until it's in the agenda, it's not a real item yet. And so I would like a little bit more time so that we have the two items either introduced or combined into a singular item before we take this back up.
Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, so then members may proceed to vote. The motion is to continue to the meeting of December 17th. On a vote of 10 to 2, and the youth member votes?
No.
No, the motion is carried to continue this item to the 17th. It's possible that it will be continued once more, just so that the items converge, but we'll see what happens. So, thank you. Next, we have item 14D, which is AO 2024-112, an ordinance approving proposed rate increases by Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility for submission to Regulatory Commission of Alaska. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none. Public hearing on this item is now closed. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Brawley, seconded by Mr. Rivera. Ms. Brawley, want to speak to it?
Just very briefly, we had a briefing on this in the Infrastructure, Enterprise and Utility Oversight Committee, and I know Mr. Johnson spoke to it earlier. I think no one likes to see costs go up, but that is the reality that we're in, and that also includes the water that we drink and use every day, and the wastewater that we produce every day. And so, I guess the other thing to note is that this still would need to be submitted to the Regulatory Commission of Alaska or the RCA, so this is one step in that process, but it's not the final step. Thanks.
Any other discussion on the motion? Ms. Bronga?
I had brought up a question to the administration, and I don't know what happened with it, but I was around trying to find out about costs to AWU, and they didn't have updated financials. It was like 2 years old of their financial documents, and I'm trying to find it right now, and I don't see it, but I just thought that was odd, and if we're asking for a rate increase, then I'd like to see that was up to date.
Through the Chair, Member Bronga, I think I'd ask Mr. Persinger to come down and address that.
Welcome.
Thank you. David Persinger, Assistant General Manager, Acting General Manager. In response to your question, the financial statements that are posted on our website are the actual certified financial statements. We don't have certified financial statements for 2023 yet, or audited financials, and so once those are done, they'll be posted. So the ones that are on our website are the audited final financials. Now, we can propose rates based on known expenses, based on what we know, but those will get adjusted as we go through the regulatory process.
So, okay.
Feedback loop, that was fun.
So it hasn't, the 2023 hasn't been audited yet, is that what you're saying? And so, but everybody knows what your expenditures are, just they're picking through to see if everything's correct? There's just a lag?
For the most part, correct. And this is tied to the municipality's audited financial statements as well.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any further questions? All right, I'll just add that we had, oh wait, no, that was solid waste we had a work session with, never mind. Members may proceed to vote.
Member Martinez?
Yes.
Ooh. On a vote of 12-0 and the youth member votes?
Yes.
Yes, AO 2024-112 has passed the body. That looks like a prudent utility practice. Next, we have item 14E. We have AO 2024-113, ordinance, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code 16.95 to establish the mobile crisis team's responsibilities and authorities. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on this item? All right, come on down. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes. The mic is off, so hit the green button. Good.
Crystal Hoke, I live in Girdwood, but my husband is a firefighter with Anchorage Fire Department, and I just want to say that I know that this program has benefited Anchorage to an extreme extent, and I know that there's so many firefighters that are thankful for this program, and I know that many of you were instrumental in beginning it, and I appreciate it, and the firefighters are really grateful from what I've heard as well, so thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing none. Public hearing on this item is now open. What's the will of the body?
Public hearing on this item is now closed.
Closed. I'm getting to that point of the night. Public hearing on this item is now closed.
Move to approve.
The will of the body. Ms. Zalatel has moved. Mr. Volant has seconded. Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you. I am so thrilled to have this item before us tonight. This represents about 3.5, 4 years of work. Just for those of you who may not remember, the mobile crisis team came about through an assembly appropriation to hire a consultant to work with the fire chief, Chief Hetrick at the time, to look at how we could establish the crisis now response model in Anchorage. in an environment where finding workforce capacity for behavioral health is very challenging. And I am really appreciative to then Chief Hetrick for stepping into the breach and saying, the fire department can help. It's a slightly different model than we see in a lot of other places. But what that's allowed us to leverage is not only, good paying municipal jobs that get to do this work, but integration with our other emergency services, as well as pairing it with that paramedic position, the clinician paramedic. That was very intentional. Someone who may be in crisis, may be having a response to a substance, may have a medical issue that is in the way of them being able to articulate the behavioral health crisis. So our unique model is something that works for our community and our community's response. And it's paying off. So what started out as an idea and then was piloted and then became a bit of a political football for a while and very uncertain is now today, if this passes, one of our core emergency services in the municipality. And it's really important to realize where this lives in code. It lives in our emergency services. This is where our ambulance services live. It elevates this service, just as we've done it in operation, to be one of our core emergency services. And so I want to highlight a few statistics. The impact of the mobile crisis team cannot be understated. So since July of 2021, they've completed 10,962 calls. Of those, 8,953 were crisis calls and 2,006 were follow-ups. Having that follow-up component is so key to the success of this as well. When someone is in crisis and they're given a referral or a resource, it may not land the first time. So doing those follow-up calls, those warm handoffs are a key to our success. Our outcomes since 2021, 89.1% of individuals contacted during a crisis were stabilized and remained in the community. 9.58% were transported to the hospital by emergency medical services, and 1.43% were transported by law enforcement. In 2024, January 1 through the end of October, there have been 4,077 calls. 87.09% have remained in the community, and only 1.61% of those were transported by law enforcement. I underscore these law enforcement statistics because one of the primary goals here were to let police do police work and to relieve their call stack. Law enforcement on the scene with mobile crisis team has been 191 instances, which also includes the University Police, Whittier Police, Airport Police, Department of Corrections, and the Anchorage Police. So those 191 calls have been spread out across a number of law enforcement agencies. I hope members saw, we had 2 emails that I think were really important I wanted to highlight for you. One was from our Chief of Police supporting codifying the mobile crisis team. This is part of the strategy to give the police department some relief. We know their call stack is big. We know we don't have enough officers. And again, letting police officers do police officer work is really important. The other is from Daryl Evans, the current president of the APDEA, and he underscores the importance of this work to allow a thoughtful public safety response and strategies with multiple touch points. So I don't think this is controversial, but for me it's a real milestone. I think back to coming to Alaska in the early, around 2005, and I represented folks in a legal capacity that often needed emergency behavioral health services. And there were only 2 options. Take yourself to the psychiatric ER or call the police. And neither of those were very good outcomes for my clients at the time. It was a choice between 2 poor options. So this has really been a game changer for our community. I want to just highlight the other action we took tonight around the firefighters' bargaining guidance. I think it's really important to point out that we've been doing the best we can, and I really appreciate firefighter paramedics stepping in and doing this on overtime. That has allowed us to really get a true sense of the demand using a 24/7 model. I'm excited for the possibility of being allowed or being able to bill Medicaid to defray part of these costs, but we have to have a sustainable workforce that can go to these calls and be a part of this crisis response, fresh, new, interested in it, not just making sure it's a patchwork of services that continue to exist. Lastly, one thing I want to point out about the ordinance is you will see that it is the chapter is called a mobile crisis response. The idea here is to define the emergency response in a way that allows flexibility and innovation for whatever makes sense for the fire department or police to add that can deal with the circumstances. So it is really meant to integrate such personnel and mechanisms as it deems most appropriate to respond to behavioral health and healthcare crises. So what we're creating is a really innovative and truly integrated model of responding to a person who needs help with the type of help that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I appreciate my colleague, Ms. Zolotel, for bringing the data, because this really is, in my mind, a data-driven solution. This is an alcohol tax success story. We were able to pilot something and then, on a permanent basis, operationalize it more generally. So, yeah, I hope we will get support tonight for this and be able to encode the role of the MCT. It's very important, as we've heard via public testimony, not only to our firefighters, but as Ms. Zolotel mentioned, our police force recognizes the value of this program. I just want to read a short excerpt from Chief Case from his letter. He says, by collaborating closely with other community resources, Mobile Crisis Team aims to bridge gaps in the system, operating a cohesive and comprehensive response to mental health emergencies. Their work not only alleviates the burden on emergency services, but also fosters a more resilient and healthier community. And this is work that has been ongoing, as we all know, and it's not the complete picture, it's part of the bigger picture, which is that integrated model that we've been pursuing. And that includes the very important role of the mobile intervention team as well under APD. And so I think at the end of the day, what we want is for calls for help, the response to be appropriately dispatched, and the teams that have that special training and that expertise can respond accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I just want to invite Chief Parch up. If you want to provide any comments, since you're here and you stuck it out on the passage of this ordinance. Broad open question. What are your thoughts on this ordinance?
You're asking my questions or my thoughts on this ordinance?
Yeah, as a representative of the chief, being a chief, we have an ordinance before us that is about your offices, so what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity to speak on it. The reality of it is I can only reiterate what members Zolotel spoke on in regards to the numbers. The stats are there. Our members see the impact. The community sees the impact. This program has been something that has come to fruition that we, as well as Ms. Zolotel, maybe thought that it wasn't going to come to fruition at some point, but it did, and now we work alongside APD in different ways to make this program work for the community. So on behalf of the Anchorage Fire Department, thank you for everyone that's done their part to make this successful.
Thank you. Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just briefly pile on. I really appreciate the work on this, and I remember all of the work that came before this to really make this happen. So I think it's, I know it's been a team effort. I know it's been a fight at times with those who didn't believe in the value of this, but I'm really excited to see it. I think the other thing just to add is this really is part of a larger transformation for both local governments and our state government, which is the crisis now, and I should say also private providers, the Crisis Now system, which really recognizes that we need to treat mental health response, emergency response as its own issue and its own needs, and that we have to have a suite of services that really go from that first response, that emergency, but then I think the other part of it is making sure that we are still building out our overall behavioral health ecosystem of services, right? So what happens after that emergency? So it's not the responsibility of the mobile crisis team to do that, but it helps them to have places for folks to go so that they don't keep repeating through that cycle either. So, so I know that work is continuing. That is certainly beyond the scope of just what the city does, but it's really important to remember that we are part of a larger movement to make that happen, to really recognize that we need to have those emergency services. And also, again, I think this has already been stressed, is the more, when we don't have services like that, it puts a lot of burden and a lot of stress on all of our other first responders who have to show up either way, right? And so we want to make sure that we have the resources and the programs that we need to meet our needs. And of course, we need to continue also to work on that community-based behavioral health and making sure that when folks do need treatment, when they need services, that there are options for them in addition to when emergencies happen. So again, this is just one part of that ecosystem, but really excited to see this taking this huge step forward and being put into code. Thank you.
All right, I don't see anyone else in the queue. I'll just end by saying, to those who doubted and those who resisted, good ideas will always win. So thank you for your perseverance and your hard work. With that, members may proceed to vote. It happened. It happened. No, public hearing is closed. Thank
Mr.
you.
Martinez?
Yes.
On a vote of 12-0 and the youth member votes
Yes?
yes, AO 2024-113 has passed the body. You missed it, Ron. So next item is 15A. 15A is AR 2024-359, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its conditional protest regarding the renewal. Oh, to the youth member, these are all alcohol and marijuana projects for the rest of the evening. So AR 2024-359, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its conditional protest regarding the renewal of restaurant eating place license 6025 for Alpenglow Coffee House LLC, DBA Alpenglow Coffee House, located at 140 Olympic Mountain Loop, Girdwood, Alaska, 99587.
Waive reading.
Thank you. The public hearing on this item is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public hearing on this item is now closed. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved by Ms. Brawley, was it?
I moved
Oh,
it.
Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Rivera. Anyone wish to speak to the item? Seeing, hearing none, members may proceed to vote.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
On a vote of 12-0, AR 2024-359 has passed the body. Next, we have item 15B. 15B is AR 2024-360, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its conditional protest regarding the transfer of location of package store license number 1596 for AK Inc., DBA Speedway Express.
Waive reading.
Thank you. The public hearing on this item is now open. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Michael Schwartz from Birch Horton Bittner and Chereau. I represent AK Inc. I realize that these protests are routinely lodged in connection with location transfers. We're transferring or seeking to transfer from our Muldoon location to our location on East Northern Lights. I didn't prepare a formal presentation. I recognize we have to apply for a special land use permit. We intend to file that application and appear before the board and answer whatever questions and have a formal presentation. So unless there's any questions.
No, I don't see any at this time. Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name. What part of town from are you speaking on your own behalf or the council?
Hi, my name is Chris
Wait,
Stoner.
hold on, Chris. Are you speaking on your behalf or the council?
No, council.
All right.
My name is Chris Stoner. I'm president of Midtown Community Council. As most of you know, Midtown has suffered millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in damage from alcohol and drug-related crime, theft, vandalism, domestic violence, public drunkenness, lawlessness, trafficking, and on and on. Currently, the city is not able to control these issues, and the Midtown Community Council boundaries, nor in our parks or public spaces. Lawlessness has become worse and worse. Currently, and I'm going to use our abbreviation, MTCC, has 11 package stores and another 10 immediately adjacent to our boundaries. The market is saturated and alcohol is very easy to purchase. The Speedway property is about 2 blocks from Walmart. The MTCC feels another package store will just fuel the problem. Therefore, we are against the transfer of subject license by AK Inc., DBA Speedway Express coming into our boundaries due to the oversaturation of package stores in our area. Public safety is the foundation for local government. The Midtown Community Council is questioning how a new package store helps with safety in an area that is overrun with stealing, vandalism, trafficking, loitering, panhandle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I thank you for your time and your efforts. It's getting late. We've worked with Michael on this process, but when it comes down to the bottom line, Midtown Community Council is not in favor of this transfer. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, public hearing on this item is now closed. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
There is a motion to approve by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Rivera. Go ahead, Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you. I'd move Zalatel Amendment Number 1.
Second.
Motion to amend by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Rivera. Go ahead, Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you. So Zalatel Amendment Number 1 requires, as a condition, a request. It basically takes forward the request from the Midtown Community Council, which is that the licensee enter into an MOU with the Community Council, substantially similar to the one that's attached to it. My understanding is that this is ongoing, it just hasn't been signed. And so the idea is to get that in place before, or make it one of the checked off items before it moves forward to AMCO, or before the protest can be released. And then I have some other comments about what we heard tonight on the main motion. Thank you.
Mr. Rivera.
Thanks. I support this amendment, but I would like to stay on the main motion. Thank you.
All right, same for myself. Mr. Johnson, on the amendment or the main?
On the amendment, it's just a question really. So I like what the MOU is trying to do. I appreciate the spirit of collaboration here, but my question would be, since these are sort of quasi-judicial matters, just to make sure that it's procedurally correct for us to pass an amendment like this and attach this sort of conditionality to the AR, we're not creating any sort of legal jeopardy for ourselves here?
I worked with legal counsel in order to do this with Mr. Gates.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else on the amendment? Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, I'll just add, I know we haven't had a lot of action on alcohol licenses recently in terms of ones that we don't just approve, but I think they're, the state statute contemplates that the local government does weigh in, of course, within bounds, but to make sure that we're following the public interest. And then I'll say on the MOUs, that is a system that was already put into place for marijuana licenses, and it seems to be working well. It has not in the past been required for all alcohol licenses, and I think it really, the creation of MOUs came out of the idea that when there are neighborhood issues, there should be communication, and there should be ways to address those issues. So I think that's important to note. So I appreciate the members bringing this forward. Thanks.
Anyone else on the amendment? Hearing and seeing none. Is there any objection to the amendment? Hearing and seeing no objection, the amendment is adopted. Next, Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I hear Midtown Community Council's concerns about the concentration of package stores. There is still a special land use portion to this, and I think the concentration of package stores is an issue best taken up as a land use issue, a local land use issue. So we still have time to have that conversation. We do not currently in code have specific parameters around concentration of alcohol licenses. So I think it will be possibly the first time we've really thought through how we want to take up that conversation. And so I just want to say that out loud. So one, the petitioner is on notice that this is going to be a part of the conversation we're likely going to have in relationship to the special land use permit, but that it's not an easy issue and it's a bit thorny, and we don't really have a specific provision in code as of right now to guide us. So I just kind of wanted to lay the playing field a bit for when we revisit this question, and knowing there may need to be some work in the meantime. Thank you.
I have Mr. Rivera, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So there is a long and storied history with this specific site, but I'm not going to get into all of that. Some of the documents that we received from the Midtown Community Council dive into that. What I do want to talk is just from a broader perspective. Ever since I got elected in 2017, there's been a strong desire to limit the amount of package stores within the Midtown area and to put some price and shooter restrictions. When I explored crafting that kind of special district, all kinds of legal quagmires came up. Who's going to be in the line? Who's out of the line? Is that distinction fair? Are we going to discriminate against one operator on one side of the line and drive their customer base to another operator on the other side of the line that doesn't have to follow those restrictions? A lot of stuff came up. Although those legal barriers killed that progress and any discussion in 2017, I would say that the desire is still there to have it, and I would say it's even stronger now than it was in 2017. Midtown has really been hit by a perfect storm of all different kinds of issues, which the Midtown Community Council representative, I think, talked about well. And I know that there are other parts of town that are very familiar with that same kind of perfect storm. All of these issues are why I think even one more package store will exacerbate the issues in Midtown, and particularly when the Midtown Community Council takes these up, they are always looking at it with a discerning eye. We can't postpone action on this item because the state deadline to protest is coming up before this December 17th meeting, which is our last meeting of the year. So I'd prefer to deliver a stronger package to AMCO, but I think it's important for us to put on the record the issues the council and businesses have seen and some of the promises made by the applicant in the form of an MOU with regard to shooters and other issues. And so I think the amendment and the exhibit does that. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and let Mr. Johnson go. Okay, Ms. Brawley.
Thanks. Yeah, I know the issue of concentration has come up before. I'm thinking of Spenard, from which Midtown Community Council was originally created years and years ago. Some of that had to do with a lot of community frustration around alcohol licenses and the back and forth. At that time, or I should say in about 2012 or so, Spenard had 54 alcohol licenses, and then if you expanded to look about a half mile outside of that, all the way to C Street, it was about 91 licenses. So not just package stores, but a lot of them. So it just is the reality that some parts of town have a lot more licenses, and I think you could argue correlation or causation, but there's certainly a lot of alcohol-related issues in this town as well. So I say all that to say I'm definitely interested in that bigger conversation. I'm aware of some of the challenges, especially the where it runs up against the law, but I know those are beyond this particular license. So as Mr. Rivera said, we want to take the time to put together a stronger package to bring to the ABC board and AMCO if we want, and or to really look at it in our local laws. But I think it's a ripe conversation, and it's one that has continued for many years. Thanks.
Ms. Bronco.
Thank you, Chair. So the exhibit in here, the example of the memorandum of understanding, is one that Midtown Community Council put together, but the liquor store owner has not signed yet. So it would be a leap of faith that he's going to sign this because we have to pass it tonight. Is that what I understood, or did I get a bit confused?
May I, Mr. Chair? Thank you. So in order to, since we passed the floor amendment, in order to get the condition removed or that part of the protest removed, they have to complete a substantially similar memorandum of understanding, and then they just lodge that to show that they've met the condition. And my understanding is that And I will ask if the attorney will come speak to us in a moment, that the operator and Midtown are already engaged in this conversation.
I appreciate you clarifying that. I just wanted to make sure that, it does get done.
Ms. Zalato.
Thank you. I believe that the counsel for the operator hadn't yet seen the floor amendment. I know it's already passed, but per the advice, the council would like to invite him up to say anything he'd like about it.
Thank you. Once again, Michael Schwartz from Birch, Horton, Bittner, and Giroux on behalf of AK Inc. I have no problem talking with the Midtown Council. I actually met with them a couple of times. I've talked to them about an MOU. I don't think that it's the right place to put it in this conditional protest. I think it would be more appropriate with the special land use permit application process. I respect where you guys are going to go with that. I understand you're going to potentially require one. I just think it's better kept for that portion of the approval process, or review process, excuse me. Thank you.
All right, I have myself in the queue.
Mr. Constant.
A couple of things. So we have a conditional licensing process so that we can get these kinds of things addressed. So I don't know that there is an issue whether it's there or there, if it achieves the same goal. I want to speak briefly to the conversation about how we have to tackle the question of concentration on this license, if that's how we're going to go in relationship to the special land use permit. I don't think we do. We can. I don't think we have to. I think that there are just enough impacts in that area of town to justify and warrant saying no more right now. And that doesn't have to be tied to a number of licenses. It just has to be tied to current conditions in that area. And so I think that a fine argument can be made without diving into the deep well of what does it mean to set up a number of restrictions of how many can be in what area. So we can do that. It's probably a multi-year project, but I don't think we have to. And so I think we can get there, having done it in a number of times now, using alternative paths. In particular, because this is asking to place a license where there isn't a current licensee and there isn't a current special land use permit, which leads to the point Ms. Zalato raised, that we are going to move through the special land use planning process. And I just want to say, I intend to vote yes on this conditional protest tonight, but I don't want anyone to believe that that means I am a yes on the special land use permit. I think that that is a conversation we're going to have under whichever rubric we choose to proceed down that road, because it is true that there are so many impacts in that part of town. So I just want to say on the record here now that just because I support this license doesn't mean I support that special land use permit. So with that, if there's any other comments, hearing and seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
On a vote of 11 to 1, AR 2024-360 as amended has passed the body. Next, we have item 15C. 15C is AR 2024-361, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its conditional protest regarding the transfer of location of package store license number 5045 with package store shipping endorsement and package store delivery endorsement for Liquor Stores USA North Inc. DBA Brown Jug located at 5311 Electron Drive.
Waive reading.
Thank you. The public hearing on this item is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none. Public hearing on this item is now closed. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Ms. Zalato, seconded by Mr. Rivera. Any discussion on the item? Hearing and seeing no discussion, members may proceed to vote.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
On a vote of 12 to 0, AR 2024-361 has passed the body. Next, we have item 15D, Resolution AR 2024-364, resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving a marijuana license and special land use permit for Baby Bull LLC, a marijuana retail sales establishment with license number M32424, DBA Cannabis, located at 149 Muldoon Road. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing none, public hearing on this item is now closed. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Salatil, second by Mr. Boland. Any discussion on the matter? Hearing and seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
On a vote of 11 to 1, AR 2024-364 has passed the body. That concludes our business agenda. Next, we will have audience participation. Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
Procedural question here. If you ask me a question to state my name, where I'm from, who represents me, that's procedural. It should not be part of my presentation.
Your clock is running, Mr.
I understand that. I want a ruling on that on Robert's Rules of Order because you stifle democracy. Mr. Patterson's presentation was an overflow of that type of behavior and dictatorship. Remember, you're a chairman and you sit in a chair and not in a throne. So give me a ruling on that. And then you closed the meeting on a very important contribution I had on the crisis intervention team, that the chaplains should be recognized and be part of that team and financed because they're part of mental health for the entire city. And look what you have in this assembly. You can't send out uniformed crisis intervention teams. Uniforms are threatening. Look how many you have in here. You have 6. Who feels safe when you see that? You don't feel safe because they're here for a reason that you stimulate, especially with Mr. Patterson, because of the most egregious tabling of the Gaza resolution, which ended up calling the question, and there was no democratic procedure whatsoever. And Amanda, she's a beautiful person. I'll offer $5 more an hour if she'd come to work with me. But it was Mr. Patterson's overflow frustration of your behavior towards him and the rest of us. You don't open you up or be patient. And I'm going to review the tape, Chris, that you closed that meeting, passed it over to Ms. Zanatel, who received $110,000 from the Firemen's Union on her recall. Now, hey, let's follow the money. Let's all be open and clear. But you have to really tone it down, Chris. And hey, that's not democracy. In fact, I think you should read this book, The ABCs of Democracy. It's a children's book, but I think you could benefit by it. Very simple rules of democracy. And one of them is freedom of expression. The second thing is I want my meeting with Eva, Mr. Farsley, and Becky over 2 things, the auctioneer's contract and the money that's owed to me on the transaction of my real estate. You shorted me $350,000. I want a meeting. And if you're accessible, Ms. LaFrance, if you're accessible, let's set up that meeting. Let's resolve it. Let's be fair. And hey,
your time has expired, Mr. Aleva.
I understand my time is up. In a remote possibility, are there any questions?
Mr. Aleva, your time has expired. You're causing a disruption. You are causing an actual disruption. One more warning, Mr. Aleva. Please escort him out of the office. Please escort him out. Please escort. Security. I would like to file to have him banned from the chambers for a period of time. Any other member of the public wish to be heard? Welcome. Please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes. The mic is off. There you go. You're good.
Hi, my name is Arinza Thickman Jr. I'm a signature gatherer. I'm historically and figuratively the state's leader when it comes to gathering signatures on local and state ballots, as well as putting a number of candidates on the ballot. The reason why I'm here is because in the words of many people, there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. Here in the city of Anchorage, we have an unconstitutional memo that prevents people from gathering signatures or registering people to vote in front of different stores or corporate facilities. I would like for you guys to investigate the matter and amend the memo that was put in by the last administration. Questions?
I have a question.
Can I ask?
We generally don't, but go ahead.
Oh, I just wondered, so are you being told in front of businesses that you can't gather signatures, or it's coming from the city that's saying you can't gather signatures?
It's worse than that. May I ask the assembly to reinstate additional time for me to explain the answer, or will I be able to?
You still have a minute 45, but we don't engage in back and forth conversations with members during audience participation.
Okay,
so.
In that case, in summary, I'm going to say that there are two memos. There's one that exists that goes back to November of 2003, which is the standard memo that was used. They modified the memo in secret, and then they used their authority to try to push me and a number of people off of premises that have been safeguarded as places to gather signatures. The reason why I'm also bringing it to your attention is because the majority of those people don't have the experience that I do, and the law enforcement agents told me that they were told to treat this as a person stealing something from a store. So if you guys shop at the Southside Target and you get caught gathering signatures, don't be surprised if you're pushed physically to the ground and treated as if you took a candy bar from the cashier's desk. This is a serious issue because I've been safeguarding signature gathering for over 20 years. And in order for all of you to experience what it's like to be involved in direct democracy, which, by the way, I give lectures in other parts of the world, you have to respect what you have. If you don't take this effort to understand what I'm saying and you lose the opportunity to redress grievances, you can't blame me, and I still have 20 seconds left.
The clock is running.
The power of the people is what got us all here. You guys represent me. Make every effort to safeguard it. And I'll land my plane. Free Palestine.
Hold on, Mr. Presverdia has a question for you.
Just a question. Will you please send us an email with the information that you've provided tonight?
Could you please repeat?
Will you please send us an email with the information that you provided tonight?
Yes, I have everyone's email on this panel.
Yeah, you just send us an email. That'll help. Then we can reply to you. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. God bless America and God bless Anchorage, Alaska.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Welcome.
Hello, Ms. Sophia O'Neill. First and foremost, thank you for stepping up for public safety. I really appreciated what I did here tonight. This is just some thoughts and sharing. For far too long, a divisional thinking has become accepted, pervasive here and in society, created only to project images and stereotypes whose sole purpose is to justify the few, their actions, expenditures, and shortcomings. Instead of improving upon such shortcomings, the masses instead emulate, even celebrate, and accept the status quo and accept what's presented to them. We do not move forward in life or society, leaving the disenfranchised marginalized. Shame too often used today instead of finding the specific causes for any myriad of societal problems. The limited insight and categorization of they, them, and all, aligned with crippling, divisive condemnation, stigma, judgment, and disinformation, harms not only those needing our help, but also those trying to provide help to society. A wise man once said, "One person can make a difference and we all should try." Those that attack me, a genuine, whose only intent is to elicit change through sharing insight and genuine experience and knowledge. I experience the worst daily because I speak, but I speak because I can, and so others that can't won't have to. My time in Alaska has been nothing but fear and discipline. Having had valuable access my entire life to learn what I needed is the only thing that allows me to stand alone. Faith, hope, education, and tenacity allows me to be where I am today, to pursue, to have the future I want. The labels and attempts to disarm, derail, and deter me have all failed. I prayerfully motivated those that can be motivated and revealed those that can do harm. The goal always to challenge people to care and understand what is going on around them again and to reconnect to solve problems. For as a nation, we have been divided for far too long. Do not hold people accountable and have woefully forgotten. To one another, do no harm. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Now's your chance. Welcome, please state your name, what part of town you're from. You'll have 3 minutes.
So, Jamie Lopez, East Anchorage, formerly Coalition, formerly homeless, managed to get out of it. I have questions. Mr. Levis said, Ms. Sanatel, I don't see her up here, but anyways, I think he had a point. And maybe, he did not communicate it in the best possible way. I have a story. I don't know if I can talk about it in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, but the short of it was one time I was homeless in a car, and I was over at Cuddy Park, and it was a Sunday, and it was very cold out in the middle of February, and so at that time I was taking food to the people behind me. Back then it was 14 tents, 25 to 40 people, and I was nonverbal at that time. I was literally riding, I was riding, and I have neuropathy, and I'm a little bit better now, managing the pain better. But I went to the back wall at that time taking food, and I'd had stuff that was prepackaged, salads and some other stuff, and I passed it out, and I came across this small little group of people by an area which was a little fire pit, and there were 3 people that were huddled around each other in the middle of February, and it was like 10 degrees outside, and I thought, maybe we'll come back tomorrow and try and get some blankets, and I was like, oh crap, these people are going to get frostbite or die. And so I drove to then Sullivan Arena, which was CWS, and tried to get blankets, and they would not release them. And, I was riding with a lady, and she called her supervisor over, and again, he would not release the blankets. So at that point in time, I was like, any place else? Lady suggested Salvation Army and Brother Francis Shelter. I then went to Salvation Army, and a lady didn't speak English very well, said she couldn't release them. It was a Sunday, come back tomorrow. So then I went down to Brother Francis. I tried to get blankets there. They didn't have any that they could give. Walked outside, and on the way, I saw a mobile crisis unit team vehicle, and the person in that vehicle was walking by. I was writing, need blankets, people at Cuddy Park, freezing, potential frostbite or death. And he's like, sorry, I can't help you. And I thought at that point in time, mobile crisis team, never had those words meant so less. Somebody at Brother Francis actually had contacted Awake. I went to Awake. I got a box full of blankets and food, and met 2 nice ladies there, and then I took it to the people at Cuddy Park. And when I originally went there, a guy was screaming. I wasn't sure if he was on, substances or he was suffering from pain, and so I took it to him. Met a guy. I thought it was somebody else, and anyways, that gentleman is now dead. But I passed out the blankets and tried to help those people. And so anyways, the general point is that maybe the mobile crisis team shouldn't just focus on mental health, but also on keeping people alive, taking people blankets if they need to respond, calling an EMT or somebody to be able to help in that manner. And there is a very large gap right now. I've been trying to get a meeting with the mayor to discuss this and other things, but there are lots of people outside and they need help.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard tonight? Anyone at all? Seeing hearing none, we'll go for member comments now. Mr. Prisverdan.
No comments. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Salt.
No comments, thank you.
Ms. Brawley.
No comment, thanks.
Ms. Bronco.
I just want to say thank you to my colleagues for voting for the mandatory ID checks. Makes me very happy.
Mr. Boland.
Thank you, no comment.
Ms. Zalatel.
No comment, thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
No comment, thanks.
Mr. Rivera.
I do have a comment. So glad to be back in person with everyone. I did want to spend a minute or two talking a little bit about South Korea. In large part because we have quite a large and vibrant South Korean community here, and particularly in my district I have several churches and a lot of community members, a lot of neighbors who come from South Korea or their family comes from South Korea. I'm not a geopolitical expert, so I'm not going to provide any kind of analysis. But what I can say with a degree of confidence is that in the span of 5 hours, we saw a president declare martial law, the people stand up, the elected officials of the nation gather together in the National Assembly, 190 of them, a majority of their body, unanimously supported a resolution against the martial law declaration. The cabinet of the president voted to support that resolution, and within 5 hours, that martial law was renounced. I saw a lot of videos and pictures of it, and it reminded me auspiciously of January 6th, and I think that's probably going to be South Korea's January 6th moment. And I just want to thank the people of South Korea for showing what it looks like to the world to stand up for your democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Littlefield.
Nothing further, thank you.
I don't know if you're still there, Mr. Martinez? No.
I am. I have nothing further. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Myers?
No additional comments, thanks, Chair.
No, I'll just say it appears to me that 3 students made it through from the beginning to the end of this meeting, and you're the heroes of the night. And so when the meeting's over, come forward and I'll give you a little note for your teacher. Ms. Salatil.
Sorry, I forgot. A milestone was achieved tonight. I have now sponsored a piece of legislation or worked with every member I've sat with on this body and gotten something through. So thank you, colleagues.
All right. If there's nothing further, then we're adjourned.